We are conducting this evening's City Council meeting as a hybrid. Council is back on the dais and the public is in via Zoom. Chamber is currently closed to the public except for special presentations and public communications. And the members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live this evening on Channel 3, AT&T UVerse Channel 99, or El Segundo TV at YouTube.com. And let's see, Madam City Clerk, may we please have roll call?
Councilmember Giroux.
Here.
Councilmember Nickel.
Here.
Councilmember Persick.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Here.
And Mayor Boyle.
Here.
Gang's all here.
Thank you. We're going to have the invocation led by Pastor Rob McKenna from the Bridge Church. Good to see you, sir. And then we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel. If we could all please rise.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, it is always an honor to be able to come before our city council and to bring the meeting before you, Lord God, but more importantly, to bring our city before you and all that you do in it. And so, Lord, tonight I pray, as I always do over our council, that you would give them wisdom, you would give them discernment and understanding. Lord, direct their ways, Lord God. And Lord, in all things, we give thanks. We're thankful for this community. We're thankful for how you provide for us in so many amazing ways. Lord, thank you for those that take care of us and watch over us and protect us, from our police department to our fire department. And Lord, thankful for our teachers and administrators. Lord, those that take care of our streets and parks and rec. Lord, there are so many that give back and do so many things. And so, Lord, we thank you that in that, Lord God, that you are blessing our city and our community. And Lord, as we are coming to the end of a year, Lord God, in some ways a very difficult year, Lord, thank you that you have provided. And Lord, we look forward to the new year coming before us. But Lord, not to get ahead of ourselves, but Lord, that we would be in the moment, day by day, Lord God, giving thanks to you. So Lord, bless tonight, bless the meeting. We give this in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor McKenna. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel. All right, next up, we have special presentations. We have a holiday events update by Ryan Delgado and Christina Cora Beckman, who should be on Zoom.
Good evening, Council. I hope everyone can hear me. Christina and I are very excited to present the winter happenings next month. The festivities will start on Wednesday, December 1st with the menorah lighting. That'll take place in the City Hall Plaza from 5:30 to 6 p.m. Very short ceremony, so be sure to get there. The next day, on Thursday, December 2nd, we will have our annual tree lighting celebration in partnership with Mattel. That'll take place from 3 to 7 on Main Street on the 300 block. We will have the holiday craft boutique, games, the lighting of the tree, and a toy giveaway. The ceremony for the tree lighting will begin at 5:30, so make sure to get your spot so we can see the lovely tree again this year. And then finally, on Friday, December 24th, the Joslin Center will be hosting the Christmas Eve dinner. We'd like to say thank you to the Kiwanis Club for sponsoring that. It's a really, really great dinner that we didn't get to put on last year. So excited to do that. If you are interested in either volunteering or joining the dinner, feel free to call the Joslin Center at 310-524-2705 to RSVP. Or if you are unable to join but would like a meal, please give us a call at 310-524-2706, and we will be sure to deliver you a meal. Again, thank you to the Kiwanis Club for sponsoring that. Thank you, Council, for having us.
Excellent. Yeah, the phone number, I think, was, the first one was 310-524-2705, and then the one for meal delivery was 310-524-2706. Ryan, would you repeat the time for the menorah lighting, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Menorah lighting will be 5:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. In the City Hall Plaza. It'll be right next to the planter in the middle.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I love the program for the Christmas Eve dinner. It's great to see that back on again, and that we're actually delivering meals as well. Of course, the tree lighting is always great, as well as the menorah lighting. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Hi, Council. Nice to see you guys tonight. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm here to bring you the latest updates for the library and what we're offering the community as well, in addition to the wonderful events for Park and Rec too this holiday season. So December 3rd is going to be the Festival of Holidays from 4 to 8 p.m. in City Hall Plaza. It's our inaugural Festival of Holidays event, and it's going to be focused on the holidays of Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Noche Buena, Omisoka, and Diwali. So it's an outdoor event that celebrates the diverse cultures, holidays, and traditions within our community with food, music, dance, and art. In addition to a variety of live dances and music performances, traditional craft and food booths, as well as interactive craft stations will be set out throughout City Hall Plaza. So we're really excited to sponsor this kickoff event. It's an inaugural event for the CDC group, and hope you'll join us. Entrance is free. Food and craft will be sold by individual vendors, and everyone is welcome. Next, we have Santa's Mailbox returns to the El Segundo Public Library and also coming to Rec Park Checkout Building. It is also sponsored by the El Segundo Women's Club, so thank you for sponsoring that. From November 29th through December 10th, kids can submit their letters to Santa either at the library, he has a special mailbox here, or in a special box at the checkout building in Rec Park. And as long as they leave their name and their address on that letter, they'll get a personalized response from Santa himself. So we also are featuring this year a Santa letter writing station at the library in the room of requirement. So we'll have templates there, remind you to put your address and your name on there, and you can add it to Santa's mailbox when you're done. So come check it out. November 29th through December 10th is when we're accepting those letters. And then on December 16th, we're holding an event called A Jolly Good Time. It's a drop-in holiday crafting program from 6:30 to 7:30 at the library. And it's going to be making cards for the Park Vista residents, crafting ornaments, and participating in spreading good cheer. So we're planning a family story time along with activities that feature Hanukkah and Kwanzaa. Seasonal surprises and displays will be offered for everyone's enjoyment. And goodies to go bags filled with tasty treats will be available as parting gifts for the attendees. So hope you can join us on Thursday evening, December 16th. And all attendees, including children over the age of 2, please wear your masks when you visit us at the library. So looking forward to all those great events, and thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Ryan.
Real quick, are we going to discuss the Candy Cane Lane? Or, no agenda, okay.
Thanks, you too. Have a great night. All right, public communication. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thanks, Lance. We have item 2. Thanks, Elias. I see you coming on. Elias Sassoon, Public Works Director, Los Angeles Hyperion Sewage Treatment, Wastewater Spill and Recovery Update. Elias, floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. This is an update regarding the Hyperion as of today. The Hyperion reimbursement dashboard summary as of today, total amount of paid $3.6 million. Just about $3.6 million have been paid so far to total residents of 1,736. The total of number of checks that were issued were 2,883. So total number of checks issued 2,883 checks. These checks were 52% going toward the air conditioned units and air purifiers and fans reimbursement, and the 48% it went toward hotel and meal reimbursements. With respect to the odor related with Hyperion, I'm really pleased to inform you that the Hyperion Air Quality Monitoring System project is on a schedule, and I've been told that there will be 2 temporary mobile trailer units, which will be fully operational by end of January of 2022. The design is ongoing for these two projects, and the transition to the permanent system with 3 permanent stationary units will take place throughout the year of 2022. With respect to the scrubber projects, these scrubber projects are both on a schedule. The scrubber by the primary tanks, it started working back in December and is now operating at about 75% capacity, and it should be 100% capacity by end of November, by end of this month. And the other scrubber, which is by Headworks facility, is still under construction, and it is anticipated that the construction will take place, be completed by early December, and the facility will be fully in operation by end of December of this year. With respect to the Hyperion odor complaints, AQMD, they received 29 complaints from November 2nd through yesterday. That's about average of 2 complaints per day. And the number of complaints per day, it varied from 0 to maximum of 6 complaints a day. AQMD, they responded to all the complaints. There was no public nuisance violation issued for this period of time, and I'll be more than happy to answer any question that you may have.
Thanks, Elias. I have one.
Yes.
The 2,883 checks issued and the 3.6 million, what percent of claims submitted, do you know, does that represent?
The dashboard does not have that information, but my feeling is we are about, I would say, close to 75 to 80% done.
Okay, thank you. And then
Yes.
I know that one member of the community had suggested that the mobile stations incorporate cleaner burning fuel or some alternative energy source. I don't remember seeing an update on that. What did they decide there?
Yes, sir. They're looking at the sources of energy for sure. They're not going to be putting generators, because generators are not just noisy, but they also have emissions. So they are looking at other alternatives, and most likely it'll be electrical connections that already are in design for connection. But for sure, there will not be any generators installed.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes.
Any other comments? Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem.
I was going to put this in the reports at the end, but I think it's timely here. Can you give us your assessment on the results of the tabletop exercise on the 10th? We put a lot of pressure on them to include us in their crisis management planning and their disaster preparation. I know that they were doing a test of their systems and involved a lot of the stakeholders for a tabletop exercise. Did that run smoothly?
Yes, sir, it did. I was there along with my colleague from emergency team, so we were there. It went fairly well. They plan to do that November the 17th. They're going to start 5 o'clock in the evening till 1 o'clock in the morning. All the work is going to be done underground, but they're going to be taking video, and then later on, I believe that becomes available. All the beaches going to remain open. There is no expectation of any odor issue at all. Basically, primarily, all this exercise is to make sure that the gate is going to open without any issues. You know, that gate was not open since 2015. So they really are trying to make sure that, God forbid, if there is any emergency, that they'll be prepared for that emergency.
Thank you.
I'll just wrap it up by saying, Elias, I know that this incident at Hyperion since mid-July has done nothing but make it more difficult for you and your team to not only complete all these capital improvement projects, but also help us with our strategic priorities. So thank you. I know you spent a lot of time on this, and all of us up here really appreciate your oversight and your expertise in this matter. We feel fortunate you're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. The credit should also go to our city manager. He has spent a lot of time as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. All right, now we're on to public communication. So is there anyone here in the chamber? I believe we had some folks who would like to speak, and then we'll go to video after that.
Good evening, City Council members. First of all, I want to thank you, everybody, for responding to my husband and myself.
Marianne, would you, sorry to interrupt, would you state your name, please?
What?
For the record. Marianne, would you state your name, just for the record?
Yeah, I was going to do that in a little bit. Okay, I'm Marianne Björklund, and I live on Maryland Street with my husband and my dogs. Okay. First of all, I want to thank the City Council members for responding to our email 2 weeks ago in regards to the sightings of coyotes. 2 weeks ago, I spoke about the fearful sightings of coyotes. Today, I'm here 2 weeks later, and I feel even more fearful. Coyotes has been hunting in packs, 2 more. They come down the hill with the little babies, with the parents in front. My husband be followed by coyotes. And even if he was shooing them away, screaming and yelling, they were unafraid, aloof, just looked. There's been more sightings during the day. I see coyotes trotting up to Main Street here, where people are out on a Sunday morning having coffee on Blue Butterfly. On our street, we've seen howling at night. It's frightening. Fire department was out. Police department with sirens. And I like to walk at night. I can't walk at night because coyotes are out. I feel like I'm going to be robbed or something. I have to look behind me. Second problem, I feel like police resources and fires are used to shoo coyotes away. What happens if it's a major incident? Coyotes run abated. Last week I was called by an officer representing animal control. Wanted to meet with us in regards to the issue of this coyotes. I called the officer and left a message. I have not still heard from him. My fear is how many more pets are being lost? We have children on the streets, toddlers. There are coyotes that have injured little children, drag them away. I don't want that to happen. We have a nice street. I love El Segundo, but I'm fearful now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bjorklund.
Hi, I'm Sheena Parks, and I am a current board member of El Segundo Little League. And my question, or grievance, I should say, is we're having trouble getting a new scoreboard at Brett Field approved through Parks and Rec and ultimately, I guess, City Council. We have the funding necessary. We've had several back and forths and virtual meetings with Parks and Rec, and they've kind of stalled out at this point, and they're referring to city council and that we need to basically get you guys' approval in order to proceed. And at this point, like I said, all the funding has been procured. We have a very detailed draft of what the scoreboard would look like and how we would use the funding for the scoreboard. We even have a family in town contractor, father of a player, who is willing to install the scoreboard for free. Obviously, there's probably approval and union work that needs to be addressed, but at this point, I'm just asking for some guidance in order to get this done, because at this point, we have no working scoreboard for Brett Field, which is our kind of our bread and butter for the league. And our season starts in beginning of February, so we just really need some help from any of you guys.
Thank you. Ms. Parks, so after we're done with public comments, city manager typically addresses all the public comments, and I'm confident he's going to address this one because
Okay.
we've heard about this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I've kept that thing working for years. I know how to get that thing back on. My duct tape and baling wire up there.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Robinson. I'm a member of this community. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's great that citizens are welcomed to make comments directly to the city council, not only so that grievances can be aired, but that feedback can be respectfully provided on matters that impact this community. I'd like to comment regarding the city council's ability to impact the quality of life in El Segundo. I've worked in El Segundo for over 20 years in the aerospace industry. And based on my experiences, El Segundo is a really great city, in large part due to the work of this city council, the city manager, police department, fire department, as well as all the city workers. You may not hear it enough, but your efforts are very much appreciated. Not only do I work in the city, but I also shop and dine in El Segundo and recreate in El Segundo, playing ice hockey at the rink on Nash Street. Although I may not be a city resident, I definitely consider myself a member of this community. While I understand it cannot be part of the agenda at this meeting tonight, I would like to request the council to consider declaring El Segundo to be a constitutional republic city, to protect the rights of all citizens who live and or work in El Segundo. I am concerned that many local businesses will be impacted by overreach from the state and federal government regarding various mandates that, if implemented, are expected to significantly reduce the size of employer workforces. And if that happens, I'm concerned that the quality of life in the city will be adversely impacted by reduced tax revenues and from potential business closures. Having endured the recent COVID pandemic, the last thing the city needs is additional strain on local businesses and their employees. By declaring El Segundo a constitutional republic city and following the example set by other cities in California, this city council has the opportunity to exude its local authority in matters not granted to the state or federal government as specified in the Constitution, and to protect the rights of all citizens who reside and or work in this city. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I think, Scott or Mark, while we're waiting on the next speaker?
Can we ask a definition question?
Yeah.
I mean, is that a legal status in California, like a contract city or charter city?
No. It's apparently something that some cities are declaring, but it doesn't have any legal meaning.
Okay. Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and honorable members of council. My name is Jeff Gurney, resident on Dune Street, firefighter for the city of El Segundo, and president of the El Segundo Firefighters Association. And I'm here tonight to give a perspective on your decision to brown out fire engine 32. Simply put, the fire department is already understaffed for the risks and hazards of El Segundo. According to every major fire study done, we are also into a year of our accreditation process, just starting the next phase, which is our standards of coverage. And it is already very clear that we are not adequately staffed to meet these risk assessments. Browning out a fire engine can only be expressed as a reduction in service and violates the original directive proposed on June 15th of 2021 to find $1 million without compromising the level of service. Here are some facts. We've already responded to 48 fires this year. Last year, 45% of the time we had overlapping calls. This year, we have overlapping calls 27% of the time. And of the 2,226 calls this year, Engine 32 has responded to 811. Other facts regarding the budget. With a steady annual payment of $9.8 million to our pension obligation bonds, El Segundo's pension system is realized as 104% funded. OPEB, or other post-employment benefits, are funded at 60%. Other cities' average is 20%. The pension trust fund, that has $5.2 million, garners an average rate of return of 18%, which builds in a self-sustaining vehicle to support the pension system. In sum, it's safe to say that the current pension system in El Segundo is sustainable. Amid the doom and gloom of the $9 million deficit, the city has maintained its 20% reserves with residual to refund the Economic Uncertainty Fund, along with federal aid through the American Recovery Plan Act to the tune of nearly $4 million. Every department in the city giving back line item reductions last fiscal year, apparatus replacement funds that have been extended a year, which, by the way, as far as I understand it, you don't pay back or refund, you just add a year. So normally where we budget 10 years, it's now 11. So it's not necessarily refunding, you just kick the can down the road a year. To your point, last council meeting, sir, it can be argued. Is that enough or not enough? And there's still a surplus of $2.7 million from last fiscal year that hasn't been allocated yet. You're going to get to do that in January. It's funny, last meeting I heard such a strong argument to increase the reserves to 25% and save as much as possible because you never know when a local disaster might hit and federal aid might not be available, yet conversely we're cutting public safety resources to respond to these local public disasters. I haven't wrapped my head around that one yet. I understand the council is interested in metrics and hard data. You want a balanced budget. You want money for capital improvement. You want return on investment for new technology. But what happened last meeting was clearly a vote to reduce the level of service to El Segundo to save $600,000. To spend on what exactly? What will you tell the residents that justifies the reduction of one of their fire engines? We are now at a comparable staffing level to that of the 1950s, when we were strawberry fields and we had goats on Imperial eating the foliage. The data to use to make this decision was primarily call volume. And you have voted to experiment on our community, tossing out the scientific data compiled over decades through reputable third-party institutions, including our current process of accreditation, for an arbitrary number. I feel comfortable quoting the former police chief, Whalen, when he said, "I caution you that the ratios and things like that have been debunked as valid measures of staffing levels. I say, stop playing Moneyball with public safety." We can cherry pick data all day long, but in the end, unless you can tell me when your family member will have a heart attack, or your child will have a broken bone, or when your house will be on fire, fire department staffing is based on a series of risk assessments. You can obviously choose to select a cheaper insurance policy, less than what is recommended, but what you will get is a reduction in service when you need it most. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Gurney. Anyone else here in public for public comment? Yes, okay.
Evening, everybody. I'm Steve Dunlap. I live on Virginia Street with my girlfriend who's here tonight and 2 sons, one of whom is away at the University of Tennessee. Go Vols. I want to start by saying shame on me. I used to chuckle at all of the posts on Nextdoor about the coyotes and the danger associated with it. I now feel like I owe those people an apology now that I've had a personal experience with this. My girlfriend has, and I've done some research and learned a lot more about it. I also want to start off by thanking all of you for your time and attention and your busy schedules that you take out to serve our community. I watched the video from last meeting, and I particularly appreciated the comments from Mr. Nickel, Mr. Giroux, where you seemed to share some of the frustration at the inaction on the coyote issue. You specifically asked if we must wait until a person is attacked before we take action, and I think that's a question that we deserve an answer to. So I went back, you were nice enough to send the coyote management plan to me. I read it cover to cover. I'd like to offer a different perspective on that plan, one that you may not have considered at this point. My reaction when I read it, I did not find it comforting. I actually found it troubling. The overall tone of the plan as you read it expresses far more sympathy for the coyotes than it does for human beings or even for pets. Both the plan and the discussion in prior council meetings seems to center around education and administrative solutions, which Mr. Drew, you pointed out, is not really being proactive in the situation. The plan explicitly accepts coyote killings of unattended pets and defines that as normal coyote behavior, which is certainly true, but I'm guessing the cat owners of El Segundo have different feelings about it. If residents have a leash longer than 6 feet, and I like to use one of those retractable leashes when I walk my dog, and a coyote attacks that person, the plan refers to that as a provoked attack. And I think words matter. The plan contains an extensive discussion around the difficulties associated with trapping, and I have some experience with trapping, and it's accurate. There's side kill, there's all kinds of other issues, absolutely. But there's no discussion at all about the possible use of RDDs, or remotely delivered drugs, commonly known as the tranquilizer gun. Seems like a solution that at least ought to be on the table, at least should have been thought about by the people who put this plan together. But what really disturbed me most of all as I read the plan was, in order for that plan to reach the lethal removal recommended level, that only happens when, I quote, the coyote is aggressive, showing teeth, back fur raised, lunging, nipping without contact, or the coyote biting or injuring a person. I asked the council to imagine how terrifying and how dangerous that situation would be. And yet that is what is required to reach the recommended level for lethal removal. So, Mr. Giroux, you asked the question, do we have to wait until someone attacks? This city's plan itself seems to suggest that the answer is yes. Now, as troubling as I find the plan itself, what I find even more concerning, and I want to be extra respectful in the way that I say this, but I do want to say that it appears to me that the city is not enforcing the plan as diligently as it might be. The existing plan, a couple of examples. In Appendix B, it states, it's called the the threat level tiered response. And it defines incidents of coyote stalking and specifically says lethal removal shall be considered. To the best of my knowledge, lethal removal has never been formally considered. And yet, it's already been triggered by the plan. Killing of pets has been acknowledged in this meeting, but I don't believe that all the steps associated with the killing of unattended pets even have been addressed, have been implemented in that plan. And finally, the law says, or the plan says, that laws against the feeding of wildlife will be strictly enforced. So we are aware of residents in our own neighborhood that are feeding foxes. And the reason we're aware of that is because the animal control officer told Megan, my girlfriend, that, and pointed out that that activity is bringing the coyotes down to come prey on the foxes. So the city is aware of this, and at least it's possible that I don't know, but to the best of my knowledge, it's not been addressed. There's another neighbor in the area that feeds feral cats. I don't believe that's been addressed. So there are things that are in the plan that say are going to be done, and at least I'd like to suggest that it should be looked into to see if they're being done. So I'll close my remarks by saying at the last council meeting, Mr. Mitnick, you said we can't just go trap the coyotes without a compelling reason. I'd like to submit to the council that dead cats, stalking incidents in our community parks, numerous approach and follow incidents, 2 of which have happened to my girlfriend and our dogs, have already provided compelling reason, and I respectfully request that the council immediately take up a vote to authorize lethal removal of coyotes before anyone loses another family pet, or God forbid, one of our neighbors or a child is hurt or killed.
Thanks, Mr. Dunlap.
Thank you for your time.
No one in chamber, so we will ask
Mrs. Schilling, is there anyone on video that would like to speak? I see one, potentially.
Yes, we have Julie Holub first, and then we have a Kazmira.
Okay, Ms. Holub, please proceed.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear, thanks.
Great. My name is Julie Hollup. I live in El Segundo. My older daughter is in 2nd grade at Richmond Street. My younger daughter will be in kindergarten there next fall. I'm speaking on behalf of the Teen Girl Space Coalition, a group that formed in late spring, early summer of 2021. When listening to the rec park assessment details presented to you later in this meeting, I ask you to please keep our project mentioned on page 24 and 29 in mind. A few months ago, a parent posted a Bloomberg article titled, "We Need More Public Space for Girls" on the El Segundo Parents Network. Hundreds of people commented saying, 1, their teen girls often complain about having nowhere to hang out, and 2, asking for a space designed with our teen girls in mind here in El Segundo. After this Parents Network conversation, I organized a Zoom attended by about 10 parents and 7 teenage girls to discuss why this space might be necessary and what the space might entail. From this initial meeting, the group has since grown to 110 members who communicate largely over Facebook. Our enthusiastic participation in the Recs and Parks online surveys are what got our project on the reassessment team's radar and ultimately integrated into the plan. Before I get into the specifics of the why, how, and what of a teen girl space in El Segundo, I'd like to speak to the larger issue of gender inequality in park space. Historically, the planning and creating of public space is dominated by men and built for the, quote, default male. There is currently an international movement toward ensuring that urban park spaces are designed to meet everyone's needs and enable girls and young women to take part in public space. Girls are designed out of public spaces at a crucial stage in their development, when they should be increasing their autonomy and developing an independent life. The architecture of public space tells them that they're not welcome. By ages 8 and up, boys use park space 10 times more than girls. In turn, by ages 13 to 15, only 8% of girls meet the required physical activity requirements. Use of fields, rinks, courts, and skate parks skew overwhelmingly male, in some cases 90 to 95%. While the girls could use these spaces, they report feeling uncomfortable in them. They feel judged, sometimes harassed, and cannot simply relax and connect with friends. They love the swings, but when they play on the playgrounds designed for younger children, they are seen as too big, too loud invaders who roll up the swings and block the equipment. Case studies in other towns show an enormous disparity in funding toward teen male-dominated spaces versus teen girl-dominated spaces. Many spend hundreds of thousands a year on the fields, rinks, courts, and skate parks, and literally nothing on spaces dominated by teen girls, often because in most towns, those spaces don't exist. Now, back to El Segundo. After meeting with teen girls in our town, what they want is very simple: a space of their own with a variety of swings that are their size, single, tandem, bench swings, circular deep benches that promote group conversation, semi-private group spaces like cubbies, nooks, pods, tunnels, active but non-competitive features like climbable sculptures and platforms. And the girls also wanted a sign designating the area for teens. We would also need some shade and lighting, which already exists in a lot of potential spots. For safety, a wide entry and exit, and then some nice extras that could maybe be worked in, some bright, modern design, solid Wi-Fi, and some lights. Parks and public spaces are crucial in establishing a sense of belonging and community. The less women and girls use them, the less they are involved in public life more generally, and the less secure they feel about their place and importance in society. Note that while designed with teen girls in mind, this space would be for any and all teens as an alternative outdoor hangout spot for those who do not use the fields and courts. Unstructured time in nature is vital to mental health, particularly in teens. We have incredible parks in this town. They'd be even more incredible and serve a larger portion of our population with a space where all teens feel welcome and appreciated. I ask the council to please allocate space and funding to this small but vital project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hollop. Ms. Schilling, looks like we might have someone else on the line.
Yeah, we have Kazmira?
Charisma, Ms. Deanda.
Charisma, sorry.
Could you hear me?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Charisma Deanda. I'm a senior at Da Vinci Science High School, and I have been an El Segundo resident for about 3 years. In El Segundo, I've been given the opportunity to meet new people, explore new restaurants, and walk around the many parks within the city with my family. I'm here to give a public comment tonight to say that there are many El Segundo youth who are in support of the El Segundo Greenway project. We hope you value this project as well as the citizens' perspectives and prioritize this project. Because I go to Da Vinci Science, I'm driven to the east side of the city, and I get to see the changes in El Segundo as I travel farther east. The city gradually fills with more corporate offices and less greenery. By creating this greenway, El Segundo would encourage a balance between the urban feel of the city and nature in all areas within El Segundo. Creating this greenway on Aviation would mean a lot to me because it would create a space for residents to walk safely and create an entry to the city that we can all be proud of. It would be great to have youth from El Segundo help design the greenway so we can be a part of our city's history and development. Thank you so much for your time and for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you, Charisma. Well said. One of my favorite soccer players right there, Charisma Deanda. Coached her a couple times. Thanks for being on tonight. Okay, is there anyone else, Mr. Schilling, that would like to speak?
No, we have no one else with their hand raised at this time.
All righty. That concludes public communication. Scott, there is a lot for you and potentially Mark to weigh in here. I've got a bunch of notes. I'm sure you were taking them as well. You want to just go through each public comment?
Sure. I'll go in the order they appeared. With respect to the coyote issue, we have our interim police chief, Jaime Bermudez. Is he out there? Here he is. We've had many discussions on our coyote management plan. I've asked him to come in here and he'll bring you up to speed on where we are, including a community meeting coming up. Mr. Police Chief.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Jaime Bermudez. I'm the interim police chief. I did just talk to the gentleman who spoke here, Steve. I talked to him about his encounter with the coyotes. We do have a community meeting scheduled for December 9th at 5:30 in the evening at Jocelyn Center. It'll be us, the police department, and also representatives from the Department of Fish and Wildlife. They will be there to answer a lot of the questions. As far as his comments regarding the coyote management plan, there is a high bar for killing coyotes. And I did also watch that video that was circulating online regarding the attack on the cat, and that was a really unfortunate video. It was hard to watch. However, we did send it off to Fish and Wildlife. They said that that does not trigger a response to come in and either identify, kill, or trap that coyote. The coyote did what coyotes do, and that's, when they're hungry, they hunt the animals. So that is part of our education campaign to make sure that your pets are indoors, and a bunch of, a lot of other recommendations that we have in there. As far as trapping, that is a policy issue, and that question did come up from our staff to Department of Fish and Wildlife. A lot of other cities are trying that. They don't recommend it because they said, you've got packs and all you're doing is replacing the area with another pack. I know that's not what a lot of people want to hear because, they want us to capture them and kill them. And ultimately that's what's going to happen. We can't relocate. And ultimately, just as we have many people that are very, I guess that are really strong set on killing the coyotes or relocating them, we have people that are very passionate about not killing them. So it's a very controversial method, but I think it's a good idea to have that community meeting, have people come in, ask the questions, and then we can come back and report to City Council and see if we want to move in a different direction as far as trapping or what we want to do.
Yeah, I got one question, Chief, real quick,
Yes.
Scott. Mr. Dunlap alleges that he is aware that there are people in his neighborhood actually feeding foxes and other people in the food chain. Is that something that we've investigated?
That I'm aware of, no. We haven't had any calls. I did run for sightings on coyotes, but that's something I heard the comment. I will talk to our animal control officer tomorrow morning and make sure that we follow up on those reports.
Okay.
Because that's a major part of our coyote management plan, and that's making sure that we don't feed wildlife.
Those reports typically code through code compliance, though, for feral cats and things like that. Is there a possibility that we can cross-check that with code? Because I know that's where having been in the greater Virginia metropolitan area, I know where that house is that gets those cat calls, and or calls about cats, excuse me. And I believe that's a code compliance issue is where those calls go.
Yeah, we will follow up on that. Most calls come in either through our 911 call center, our business line, or also code enforcement. So we will follow up on that.
Okay, Councilman Nichol.
My question is, it's in regards to Fish and Wildlife. We don't live in a one-size-fits-all state. Do they have different metrics for different pockets of the state, being as we are not adjacent to rural land? This is a very metropolitan community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just trying to understand if they take that into consideration, or if they're like, oh, well, the state mandates this, and yep, that's what coyotes do. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense that that's what coyotes do in rural land, but this is not rural land.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I have brought up those concerns to the two representatives we've been in contact with. Trapping is allowed by private residents. It's also something that the city can move in that direction. However, based on the information he has collected from other cities, it's a high bar to get there, and we can't relocate them. They have to be euthanized, and there's a lot of complexities in doing that.
Next question.
Yes.
Am I allowed to defend myself against a coyote?
Yes, absolutely.
And in what manner?
Well, that question was actually asked, and in any way you can defend yourself. I would encourage you not to fire a firearm if you don't have to, but I mean, you can kick, you can stab, you can do whatever you need to do to protect your animal or your family with a coyote.
And that's not something that then someone would get in trouble for?
No.
So somebody owns a pellet gun and they're taking this pellet gun to the coyote that's eating their cat on their front porch. There's no recourse for that individual.
No, that's completely justifiable.
I ask these questions because I think you guys can all understand where I'm going with this, and the fear I may have is, if the residents of this town don't feel like that we collectively are protecting them in a manner in which they feel safe, then they will take actions into their own hands, and then those actions could potentially cause damaging effects to other quality of lives in town. And so from that standpoint, it's, I guess, leads me to a question that I have in regards to the management plan, which is does the management plan speak to it being a policy decision, or does it indicate whose decision it is in this pecking order? Is it your decision? Is it animal control officer's decision that it's like, hey, this is elevated to this level and I got to take this coyote out? I mean, I guess, so here's the scenario. Running through Rec Park early in the morning, I see a coyote, I see a second coyote. I see people walking dogs with headphones on, and I wave them down and say, hey, there's 2 coyotes over there. As I exit the park by the city maintenance yard, I see the animal control officer. I say hello, and he's gotten a call for it, and he's like, where are they? And I said, they're right out there on Pinefield. If that coyote goes and attacks someone's animal while he's there present, is he allowed to protect them?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I would expect our animal control officer, any one of our officers, any of our field personnel to do everything possible to protect either our resident or our pets. And so regardless of, whether it's kicking or a baton or whatever it is, certainly that's the primary goal, maintaining that safety.
I know Councilmember Perstuck's been waiting patiently. Do you want to? Yeah, no, you're okay. Oh, yeah, okay. Scott.
Can I have a question? Are you done?
I can continue. Go ahead.
Okay, Carol.
No, I just wanted to ask about trash. A lot of people are, after the pandemic, people leave a lot of trash around. Is trash one of the components of causing a lot of the coyotes coming into town?
Yeah, trash is a big component of our education campaign because that's what coyotes do. They will eat anything. And that's one of the ways that they feed themselves is looking through open trash cans, dumpsters that are left, on the side of the house that they can easily access. So yes, that is a big problem.
So as a community, if we want to help to try to help this cause, if we all picked up some trash and made sure the areas around our houses didn't have any extra food or trash around, that would really help.
Yes, that would help tremendously.
So, I mean, in the end, I know that there's 2 sides of this coin, right? I mean, you mentioned it. You got people who think they're great, they're beautiful, and they're afraid of them, but they don't want anything bad to happen to them. And you got the other side that wants to get rid of them. But I'm kind of echoing what Councilmember Nichols said. I think we're at a point now, this has been, 2 months we've been doing this? The problem's not getting better, it's getting worse. The videos, I sent them to you, so it's pretty brutal. That's literally on someone's front porch that happens. So my feeling is that either we're gonna do something about it, or to Councilmember Nichols, he didn't go right out and say it, but I think he was getting in this direction. I think people are gonna start taking matters into their own hands, one way or another, right? I do think we're just about to that point. Is that what we want to happen, or do we want to have a solution to it? Because I understand the talk, I understand the education, I understand all of that. You can only beat that drum so much before something happens. And this isn't going away anytime soon. So I really believe that we're in a situation where we have to make a decision, either let it go until someone gets attacked or someone just starts attacking back on coyotes, or we do something about it. That's just my personal feeling on it. Do you disagree? Am I wrong on that assessment? I mean, I just looked, you only have those options. That's what's going to happen.
No, that's understood. And the only thing I can tell you is I remember when the management plan was being developed at the time, I think it was 2016, 2017. And the problem was really bad back then. In fact, I think it was probably worse than it is now. And through a very comprehensive education campaign, at least I would like to think so, the problem went away. And so there is a way that it gets worse and then it kind of goes away. Right now it happens to be that season when the coyotes are out and the pack grows, and unfortunately we are in that moment right now. But I think that community meeting with representatives from Department of Fish and Wildlife will be very helpful for people to hear some of the things that these representatives have either implemented or learned about the problem in other cities.
Are we hearing anything from LAX on it? I mean, presumably that some of that land and on the easement between us and Hyperion is got to be one of the home bases for these packs, these dens. Or are we hearing anything from them on their management plan?
I know that, for example, about a month ago, we sent out our drones patrolling for some of these dens and these packs, and we did find them going into certain areas of the city where there was overgrown vegetation, and so we're working with Public Works. That's another part of our management plan to make sure that we get rid of areas where they're able to hide and in the city. So we are working with other city departments.
You cut ahead to my next question, which I appreciate. A big part of some of these attractive nuisance pieces, right, is vegetation removal, and we've seen that around the city in regards to all kinds of illegal camping or unwanted camping in the case of the coyotes. Is there anything that we can do, and maybe there's a question more for the city manager than for you, anything in the city in terms of mobilizing assets or reprioritizing assets for brush removal to make this place less hospitable for dens? If that's the case, that could be something that could be a somewhat unsexy move that might have a big dividend for us.
Happy to further pursue that. I believe we had that happen not that long ago, and we cleared some brush.
Yeah, we did a comprehensive brush removal earlier that got rid of some attractive nuisance camping locations, and it was a very subtle move that had big dividends. So in this regard, I've got hedge clippers and a leaf blower, and I'll help.
Yeah, to that point, I know you've worked LAWA. How about DWP? That's got to be a haven for a lot. Have they done anything with all that brush on the dunes?
We haven't reached out to them. I think most of the sightings have been, we have had a lot of sightings at the park. We've had some sightings by the water tower, and we're currently working with Public Works to clear some of that brush out of that area. And but yeah, we can follow up with DWP.
I mean, is there any thought that maybe this the sewage spill and the smell and the toxic gases that were coming from there, that push the coyotes east into the city? Because it seems like the timing seems very
I can tell you this, because this has come up. This has been discussed for 3 years in the Council of Governments, which is 16 cities, and Torrance and PV have a much worse problem than we have right now. So much so that they implored the COG to consider a strategic priority for coyotes specifically, and the COG board of directors said at that point it was somewhat limited to them. You guys go work through your collaboration. I know, Scott, you've been working with them, and come back to us with your findings. But I think it's prolific through the entire South Bay, but I think we are feeling it worse here in the peninsula because we have open space right next to us in vast quantities that a lot of our other neighboring cities don't have, with a lot of brush and shelter in place.
Yes.
And Scott, I know you wanted to address this too, because you raised your hand earlier.
It's a very tough issue. You heard of the various tools in the toolbox for you as the governing body and for our residents, the education, keeping your pets in at night. But the ultimate tool this council has is to do the trapping. And Torrance is doing that right now. They've hired a trapper. They're doing it. When the animals are trapped, they are euthanized. And then that's not the solution per se, because other coyotes backfill. But that's the ultimate tool in your toolbox. You'll have to make the decision at some point. We, as your staff, feel we're not quite there. But if you want to go down that path, we can go down there, hire a trapper, and get going right away.
How long has Torrance been doing that specifically?
I'll find out. We're having our monthly South Bay City Managers meeting tomorrow, and the Torrance City Manager and the Rancho Palos Verdes City Manager have to provide an update on their effort. I think a couple of months ago, or maybe longer.
Are they doing that in partnership with Fish and Wildlife?
I don't know exactly.
I mean, because it would be, who's measuring like the data in terms of whether or not it's working in the population? Is there any science behind it, or is it just reactionary, go get them, see what happens down the line?
Let me get a definitive answer, because otherwise I'm guessing.
Yeah, because it would be interesting to know, look at some case studies and say what happens post-trapping and euthanization. Does the population come back in full force? To what extent? How quickly?
We'll get that, but we do know, I've read through our plan, I've looked at the data and talked to others in this region and outside. It doesn't have the intended solution or outcome, because if it did, everybody would do it. So other coyotes come in and backfill. But there are people with private property in other communities where there's more landscaping and all that, where they do trap on their own property. And our residents have that ability on their own. They can't go release the animal elsewhere. They have to have it euthanized. And typically when residents do it, they hire somebody to do it for them. So that's the ultimate tool. It's in your toolbox.
Thank you, Scott. Any other comments or questions? Are we good to move on this one?
Just in regards to the trapping, do we know how much that would cost to hire a trapper?
Yeah, I heard the number for Torrance. I thought it was in the low thousands per month.
So it's something that the city manager can do without council approval?
If I'm gonna do that, I'm getting your approval, but yes, technically.
But, I mean, it's under $50,000, so you can make that decision.
I could, but given the public policy ramifications, I would bring it to you.
Okay, so I know this isn't on the it's not on the agenda, so we can't give any direction.
No.
But you can read between the lines.
Yeah, this discussion's gone on for a long time for non-agendized items, so.
I think we should, if someone wants to suggest putting the agenda for next meeting, we can certainly do that.
I would like to suggest putting this on the agenda for the next meeting, Mr. Mayor.
I mean, December 7th, and we have the community forum December 9th. Maybe we should move the community forum up.
Yeah, I would recommend that.
Well, the only problem with moving is there's a lot of schedules to coordinate for that meeting. So I would ask that we have the meeting on the 9th, allow people to come to that and educate the public on that, and then we can move forward from that.
We would still have a meeting on the, is it 16th?
The
No.
21st.
21st.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I'd also like to hear the Fish and Wildlife's recommendations, and again, if they have any case studies of where this active management has been done and what the results have been, because everything I've heard has been, it does not work. So if there's evidence to prove that it does work, I'd certainly like to see that. I think everyone on council would.
I'll just play devil's advocate real quick, because, I mean, I don't know if you spray for ants at your house, but I do. And they come back. And then you spray again, and they come back. It's a management. You know, it's simply management.
Maybe you shouldn't spray. I don't get them.
I don't like ants.
Just kidding, Scott.
But it's, at some point, it becomes so I deem ants a public nuisance on my property. So then I have the right to rectify it. So we as the council now are looking at, do coyotes pose a public nuisance to our residents or a safety hazard for our residents? So that's just what I want to discuss. I understand it would be wise to do it after this public meeting, but I don't want the residents watching or the residents that come here that are walking their dogs that are scared to feel that we are not doing anything. And so I would just implore you to implore your staff to just do whatever they can, whenever they can, and make sure that the residents feel safe in those scenarios. Even if it's us as a city offering to provide pepper spray or some sort of spray that then people that are walking dogs could take with them to help protect themselves. I don't know. I mean, anything that we can do to help, I'm all for helping while we're kicking this can down the road till this meeting.
And if cleaning up the trash and clearing out the brush and the overgrown weeds and plants, can we do some type of communication out to the public to cut back, to trim the gardens, to trim away any excess areas where dens could be held, and then we as a city can say, here's where we are looking at our land where we're actually trimming back, and then do a big concerted effort on picking up trash. There's a lot of trash around town. You know, it's more than it ever was, and I think people need to realize that we all humans are causing, are part of the reason why this is happening.
Look, when we were overrun a couple of years ago, and we changed out the trash cans, we declared victory because all of a sudden we had these giant heavy litter trash cans and the coyotes went away. So clearly there's a new root issue right now, and whether it's dens and brush or some environmental effects because we had a really dry spell and then some water, but there's two concurrent things that are both true. People need to feel safe, so whatever to do to make them feel safe, but also finding a solution that is not whack-a-mole, I think is pertinent. So I'll leave it at that.
Let's wrap this one, folks. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate your time. We got several other public comments to get through. All right, we also had, Scott, you want to just go through the list as quickly as you can, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you had a speaker who had comments about the Little League baseball scoreboard. Excuse me, the Brett Field scoreboard. I've shared with council, we have staff working with the Little League. We're trying to make this project happen. And that individual who spoke, if not already, our Public Works Director, Elias Sassoon, will talk to her. If he hasn't already, we'll bring her up to speed. We are working collaboratively with the Little League to do it. It's not as simple as just getting a new sign, putting it in there. There's foundation issues and so on, but we are committed to getting that resolved.
Great, thank you.
Hold on a sec, Scott, I just on that, does she mention that the scoreboard right now at Brett Field is completely inoperable? Is that true? If it is, that's problematic.
Yeah,
This is the year, actually, if I'm not mistaken, if she was still here, I think, actually, we hosted district all-star tournament this year at Brett Field during the summer. It's always a big thing. If that thing's inoperable, we have a problem, and it has to be addressed immediately.
Understood, and we are working on that, and we're going to move forward with it.
Okay.
Elias is on this call. He could potentially speak to whether or not it's currently operational or not.
Okay, he's right there. Go ahead.
Good evening. I believe we do have some issues with that scoreboard. Sorry, but I do want to echo what the city manager indicated. In fact, we have been working with the consulting firm, and we already have reviewed and approved an agreement with them. And this Thursday at 11 o'clock, myself and members of the community services department will be visiting the site along with the engineer. And as the city manager indicated, it's really not as easy as it sounds, because we have to make sure that the foundation for this scoreboard is done properly, including the seismic design. But I would like to inform you that we'll be looking at the existing foundation to see if we could utilize it for the new scoreboard. And in order to do that, since we do not have any drawings, and this was done many years ago, I'm gonna have to talk to the engineer and see if we could do an analysis, and if we could save that foundation. It's gonna save lots of time and money. So I just want the city council know that we, as indicated by the city manager, we are working very hard on this, and hopefully we'll be able to inform the city council next week about the progress.
You said, well, like, you're working on it. Now it sounds like you're not even out of the starting blocks yet. This is something that I know was brought up a long time ago. I know for a fact, because I personally brought it up. I also said we were looking at all the scoreboards in town, not just Brett Field. So before I was concerned, now I'm extremely concerned.
Council, we're going to work with Little League to have that thing operable.
It needs to be operable by the time the season starts, one way or another, or give them an alternative.
Yeah, that's what we're working toward, period.
Okay, let's let staff get their work done. Thank you. All right, next up you had Steve with, we already addressed the Coyotes. Jeff Gurney, the representative, the president of the El Segundo Firefighters. There were 2 points I wanted to get clarity on. One was the claim that there have been 48 fires, and the other was that there would be a reduction in safety. Can you comment on both those matters, please?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council. All right. Before I comment on the issue of the number of fires and all of that, let me repeat something I said at the last council meeting. In this city, through our building codes and our talented employees in development services and the fire department in terms of inspections and how things are built in this town, we have very few fires. Buildings are built very well here. Our homeowners do a superb job when they do additions to their home or remodels or whatever. We have very low numbers of fires. We heard a lot of emotion and a lot of passion and a lot of hyperbole at the last meeting. And I wasn't planning on saying anything, but the reference at the last meeting to 58 fires in the first 10 months of this fiscal year, with 14 of those, if I believe that was the statement, 14 being of significant building fires, And tonight we heard a reference, I think, to 50 or over 50 fires.
48, he said.
Oh, 48? I'm sorry that this is the focus of the discussion. It shouldn't be. It should be on the budget issue. But for the folks who are watching at home, let me reassure you, those numbers did not take place. And in response to what was said at the November 2nd City Council meeting, I asked for the incident sheets for the 14, quote, 14 significant building fires. I read them. There's actually only 12 sheets for the first 10 months of this fiscal year. Of those 12 fires, 8 were from other cities outside of El Segundo that our fire department was involved in through a mutual aid call. 8, 5 in Manhattan Beach, 2 in Redondo Beach, 1 in Torrance. So that left 4, and they were relatively small incidents outside of our city. Of the 4 in El Segundo, 1 wasn't a fire, it was an electrical issue, and by the time the fire department got there, it was resolved. On the incident sheet, it said no fire. Another was, the other 3 were very minor, and 1 actually was a minor incident in which the police department actually put it out before fire got there. So it left 2. 1 was an attic fire, and I believe 1 was a garage fire. Very small, minimal damage. Definitely not a significant building fire. So very few fires in general in El Segundo, especially during the pandemic. So when you look at the numbers, they don't support what has been stated. It's hard for me as city manager to have to say this, but my staff and I looked at the facts from the incident sheets prepared by this fire department. Incident sheets tell a different story. Is the community at risk? No. Let me qualify that. There's always an element of risk in anything that we do. In my role as city manager, been in the business a long time, I'm your civilian oversight over that department. You're the ultimate oversight as a governing board. But I can't support the statement that because we're doing something a little different with an engine, that this community is at greater risk. So I'm just telling you that, and I want the community to understand that. We're going to take a look at the data during the next 8 months, and then we'll see what the outcome is. And you'll have that data in front of you. But let's be clear, this city has not had 58 or 50 fires over the last 10 months.
All right, thank you for clarifying. Then we had the Teen Girls Center. I think we also, on council, received a couple emails on this topic earlier today.
Yeah, that'll be item 15.
Okay, and then I think Charisma Deanda was talking about the Greenway project. I wasn't sure at the beginning. Is that what yeah. And that's still forthcoming in the future. Anything to discuss there?
Yeah, that's been discussed at the El Segundo Economic Development Corporation, and they are advocating just for the council. They're going to come in to talk to you about this project in the next month or 2, or after the new year. They are advocating that the business community take ownership of coming up with the funding to build it and to maintain it, as well as being an advocate for federal and state grants for that project to go forward. But they would like to work in partnership with the city in terms of going after federal and state funding.
Bless you.
Okay, so you'll hear more on that project later on.
Mr. Mayor, can I throw one thing in there, and it touches tangentially on the fire service piece, but just on the financials. I know there's a lot of budgetary items that were spoken of, and some of those, I think that were probably presented in a manner that this council, in a very difficult budgetary year, took steps to ensure that all of our pensions, irrespective of public safety and non-sworn throughout the city, we ensured that those pensions were 100% funded. So someone who has served this city and retires does not have to worry about, in 2030, the existential threat to the fiscal stability of this city. There's a cost to that. I mean, more than 15% of our general fund every year will go to service the debt we use to pay that. So I feel as though that was inadvertently implied by the commenter, that we were flush with cash, so much so that these things were fully funded. Well, they're fully funded because the steps that we took on behalf of the residents of El Segundo to fully fund them, and the steps that we took, 18% return, everybody had a great return this year, but those are things that Joe did to, in advance, make sure that we could make good those payments. And it's part of, you know, the trust that our employees have with us, that when they sign a contract that says what their pension is going to be, that we will fund that. And going into this year, we were not able to fund that. Without those steps, 2030, 2031, 2032, we were not able to fund that. So to that end, I suspect those comments, maybe I took them wrong, just because I know that with the staff and with the subcommittee, we worked so hard to make that come to fruition. But I think it's important to know that we have a part of our trust that we have in them and they have with us is that we are good on our intentions. And incurring that north of $200 million worth of obligation that we covered is a big part of that. I mean, staring down $200 million of unfunded liability, unfunded, so on top of what we could pay, was no fun. But we thought it was important as a city and as the representatives of the city to make sure that we honored our obligation to them when we did that. And I think that in that, I think the sense of that comment was likely to I would hope to just bring that up to the public's attention and not weaponize that a bit. Thank you.
It's a great clarification. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel. Okay, procedural motions. Read all ordinances and resolutions on the agenda by title only. Would someone like to make a motion to read all ordinances and resolutions by title only?
Sure, so moved.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
Persick, second.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk, would you please take a voice vote?
Councilmember Drew.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol.
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
Mayor Boyle.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, on to consent. Are there any polls?
I hate to do it, and I promise I'll be really quick with mine, but 7, 9, and 11, I promise I'll be quick.
7, 9, and I have one. Let's see, so any other polls? Okay, I'm gonna pull 6. So do we have a motion to approve items 3, 4, 5, 8, 10, 12? That's it.
Sure, so moved.
Thank you. We have a first. Do we have a second?
Nickel.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Tracy, if you would mind, voice vote, please.
Was that Councilmember Drew and Councilmember Nichol?
Correct.
Thank you. Councilmember Drew.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol.
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
And Mayor Boyle.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, item 6, 2022 City Council meeting calendar. A couple years ago, we had established that we were going to do somewhat of a summer recess with 3 consecutive summer council meetings off. Seemed to have worked really well. It gives staff a break. It gives council a break. Well, 4 of us still have kids in school. Actually, 5 of us still have kids in school. And it was proposed differently with a off and then an on and then an off. So I just want to get clarification and be sure that that was the will of the council, that we wanted to be off 1 week, back in session the following council meeting, and then off again the following. Yes, Mr. Mitnick.
The way you articulated it, Mr. Mayor, is correct, and you're talking about not having a meeting on July 5th, having a meeting scheduled for July 19th, and not having one on August 2nd. August 2nd is National Night Out Night. The meeting on July 19th, we're putting back in as really a holding pattern. Should you need it, it's there. If we don't need a meeting, we can cancel it.
I would suggest that we leave it out, and if we need it, we schedule it as an emergency.
Okay.
That would
like
be my
that
motion.
suggestion.
Excuse me,
I
Councilman?
like that suggestion.
Thank you. Okay.
Look, it's not as if there's going to be a pandemic or riots or an exploding poop plant in the middle of the summer. Wait.
If there is, we can always call a special with 24 hours notice. Okay, so I would move that we actually take off the 5th and 19th and the 2nd, 3 consecutive council meetings. That's a first motion. Do I have a second?
Nickel, second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please take a voice vote?
Councilmember Drew.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol.
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
And Mayor Boyle.
Yes.
All right, it's a 4-1.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm back to you, Mayor Pro Tem. Next item, please.
Item 7, purchase of 1 new Ford F-550 dump truck. It's an opportune time. I think that all of us would agree to be buying cars. However, I think that buried in the staff report, you'll see that this really speaks to the fine work that our maintenance team does. This thing was used heavily, purchased in 2003, on our calendar of service life replacement. This thing was due to be replaced in 2013. This is something that drives me crazy about replacing things on a calendar as opposed to on their maintenance levels. But they kept this thing going for another 8 years. That is a credit to them and puts money back in the pockets of the city. So now it has an irreparable wiring harness. The harness is no longer made by Ford. It's no longer serviceable, so we're replacing it. I just want to draw attention to, I know I jump up and down and talk about replacing vehicles on a schedule, but I think we did it the right way this time.
Thank
So
you,
I'll move
Mayor.
approval.
Mayor Pro Tem, I have to ask now that you pulled it, not quite the life of a B-52. However, have we considered a lease and/or an electric vehicle? I know electric for dump trucks aren't quite there, but they're really close, and there's certainly hydrogen too. So have we explored all options on the alternative energy front?
I'm not 100% sure with respect to this class of vehicle, but definitely looked at the others. Typically, vehicles like this are very difficult with alternative fuels. I don't know if we looked at leasing for this vehicle.
I don't know why we've talked about leasing as an alternative to purchasing vehicles, the worst depreciable asset class there is, and why we continue to buy vehicles. So, and then is this gas or clean diesel? Do you know? I didn't read the staff report because I was not concerned about this item until the Mayor Pro Tem pulled it.
Mr. Mayor, this is unleaded fuel vehicle. The proposed purchase will be unleaded.
Thank you. Did we explore leasing, Elias? Do you know, or is that Joe's department?
Yes, sir. We did analyze it, although not very deep. And for dump trucks such as that, it's very expensive to lease it. It is more cost effective to purchase that. But again, the analysis was not very deep. I'd be more than happy to go back and do an analysis, a more detailed analysis. If the city council wishes for me to do that, I'd be more than happy to do it.
I would, and here's the other thing, Scott, I've brought this up several times before, maybe it's because I was a liaison on the environmental committee for a couple of years, is that we should have I think we should have a policy whenever we purchase something. I think we've actually talked about this on the dais, that there's a checkbox. Did we explore the cleanest burning alternative possible? I mean, and so I don't know why we don't have more electric vehicles on fleets. There's just so many other things that I think we have a huge fleet of vehicles that largely go unused in this city, with the exception of probably dump trucks. But I would rather see that. I know we're kind of nitpicking a little bit, but I think it would be a good opportunity to revisit this one.
Sure. And Mr. Mayor, just so that you know, the cost of having a more clean dump truck is about twice as much as this price. So I just wanted you to know we looked at that.
Is that electric or hydrogen? What did you look at?
It would be, I believe it would be electric, but it would be twice as expensive, Mr. Mayor.
And if I can interject, part of me wants to say amen, because I've been pushing for leasing in general for vehicles. We've looked at it, and I've been told it's more cost effective for our fleet to do the purchase and the maintenance of our stuff. But as we go through next year's budget, and Elias is listening, I'll be happy to revisit the leasing issue, and as we go into next year's budget, because professionally, personally, I'd rather see us do leases. It's a lot easier. But that's a topic for another discussion, but we hear you loud and clear, and I appreciate the comments.
So is this one coming back or not?
No, we need to get the dump truck.
It's that urgent? We need a dump truck that urgently?
Yeah.
Yes, with all due respect, we really are suffering.
We can rent dump trucks at all over United Rentals and everywhere, right? Okay, I'm fine. I'm not going to die on this one.
But
I just think,
broader
out of
picture,
principle, Scott, I would like to see us consider going forward anytime we make a significant purchase on an asset, that we consider what the energy source is, and lease versus finance, and a little bit more thoughtful.
Absolutely happy to do it. That's best management practices, and local government are moving that way anyhow. So thank you.
Okay.
I agree.
All right. So
to that note, before you move on, Scott and Elias, since you're listening,
Yes,
at
sir.
the city yard, we have a fuel station, correct?
Yes, sir.
When, like any fuel station owner, those tanks need to be serviced and/or at some point completely recommissioned, correct?
We keep them maintained, yes, sir.
So, but you know how from time to time you'll see a gas station will shut down and they will dig those tanks up and they will completely redo them. Is that something that we know when that is going to be needed for the city?
Yes, to my knowledge, we are not to that level anytime soon because we keep a good maintenance and good records of those. You normally do that if those gas tanks start leaking pretty severely, and we're not there yet. They seem to be in pretty good shape.
I just think we should look into that, have an idea, because then if we're crafting this plan as to when we are looking to transition, because that's not a cheap fix, that's not something that, Mr. Mitnick can sign his pen to. So I think we just need to consider all factors in this choice of when our fleet life is changing over and that key proponent, because gas prices, I think I paid $5.19 a gallon yesterday when I filled up, and I know that we're not paying $5.19 a gallon to fill up our city vehicles, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Just the whole zoom in, zoom out, right? Understanding that the right hand
We
faces
will
the left
check.
hand.
We
so
will
need
check
to know.
those tanks.
Okay, thanks. I'll move approval.
I actually already moved that. I already moved.
Oh, you did? Yeah, I'll second. Thanks. Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Giroux,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol,
Yes.
Councilmember Perstock,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
Mayor Boyles.
Yes, okay.
5-0.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, item 9.
Item 9, resolution approving application for per capita grant funds. I wanted this one highlighted as well for a similar reason. We get up here often and lament that our property tax dollars are largely taken up by the state and by the county, and we never see them again. And on the back end of that, when we spend money at the end of the year, if we have things that are unallocated that we spend on things, we make a promise to people often that we are going to go look for that money, whether it's from the state, federal government, or the county. And in this regard, we spent a lot of time talking about Acacia Park, about whether or not it would have a pool or not a pool, and we settled on something that was still a very expensive renovation, but with the back end that we were going to look for grant money for it. I think oftentimes people watching at home assume, yep, sure, you'll go look for the money, sure. Well, we really, really do, and I think this is a feather in the cap of the staff that shows that they were able to go get $168,000 of backfill for it, with the possibility that we'll get another $100,000, depending on whether we get the water grant money to come in. And that is a significant, again, that's people getting dollars back in their property tax that we otherwise would not get from our allocation, and finding ways to get it back through grants and funds that are out there. So I think that this is, that was started by Meredith when she was at Park and Rec. She was the one who made this grant application, and in a big staff changeover, they were able to continue the effort and get this money back in. So I would just want to highlight that, and so people at home should know that their staff works really, really hard to protect the money that we don't get directly and get it back indirectly. So with that, I'll move approval.
I'll second. Madam Clerk, voice vote, please.
Councilmember Giroux,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol,
Aye.
Councilmember Perstock,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you. Okay, item 11.
Item 11, resolution to rescind intent to withdraw membership from the Independent Cities Risk Management Authority for fiscal year 22-23 and provide written notice of intent to withdraw in fiscal year 23-24. For the people watching at home, this is a big deal. There's huge amounts of money to move around. This is the city's liability policy. This is our insurance carrier. And it's buried in a bunch of government acronyms and mumbo jumbo, which is sort of the way these things happen. But it's disproportionately effective for us because this is the way the city handles litigation. And opting to change our insurance pool is a big deal. And the reason that we wanted to do it is because we have been outperforming our insurance bracket. We were concerned, and the people as taxpayers should want to know that we're concerned that we're getting the best value in our insurance purchases. So we looked at it this year. We're going to kick it down the road for a year because we think there's other things that might be out there, but it's still a pretty good risk pool. And our team has thought this is the best way to get the best value for the residents. Again, our liability on this, our deductible is $700,000. I mean, that's a lot of money for the residents of El Segundo to understand that the amounts of money buried in this item number 11 are very, very large and affect the needle on our budget significantly. So it's a big deal that we do these things. I only highlight it as a point of edification for people that ICRMA, as cumbersome an acronym as that is our insurer. And it's a big thing, and I think that this thing, although it's obscured in the bottom, is just important to highlight. So with that, I didn't really want anything on there. Just it's a matter of, I know when I first was a candidate, I had a very loose sense of what it was, and then as the delegate to it, when I first started, then your eyes get really, really big, really, really quickly when you see the amounts of money that some of these cities are dealing with on this. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval.
Thank you. And do we have a second?
Giroux, second.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, please.
Councilmember Drew,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol,
Aye.
Councilmember Persick,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
Mayor Bliss.
Yes.
5-0.
Okay, thank you. Item 13 is being continued to December 7th. That relates to preferential parking for California Street, Holly Avenue, and Kansas Street, portions thereof. Then we've got a staff presentation on Candy Cane Lane, item 14.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, our Community Services Director, Melissa McCollum, will present.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. It's nice to see all of you. If you'll give me just a moment, I'm going to share my screen. And I am so happy to report this evening that residents of East Acacia Avenue are hosting El Segundo's beloved Candy Cane Lane in 2021 after having to cancel it last year for the first time since 1949 due to public health concerns related to the pandemic. Organizers will offer a modified version of the event this year that's scheduled to run from December 11th to December 23rd. The biggest change is that Santa will make an appearance on opening night, so Saturday, December 11th at 7 p.m., and will help light up the houses, but he will not be meeting individually with the kids on his sleigh in the cul-de-sac this year. This is the path that Santa will take on opening night. The El Segundo Fire Department with police escorts will deliver Santa via Center and the 1100 block of East Acacia Avenue to the intersection of East Acacia and California. With the help of barricades from Public Works and assistance from friendly private security reinforcements, Santa will have a safe path to the 1200 block where he will proceed to walk the rest of the street, pointing and lighting up houses. Santa will be mic'd this year to greet and help direct the crowd. And after all of the houses are lit, Santa will disappear into one of the houses at the end of the block and will not make another appearance that night. El Segundo Media and partners will help get this message out prior to the event to help manage the community's expectations and potentially encourage visits throughout the 2 weeks leading up to Christmas, rather than having the bulk of family visits on opening night. East Acacia residents contribute greatly to the success of this event by sharing their amazing holiday decorations with the community, and I believe that you will be recognizing organizers, including Jennifer Turnbull, at the City Council meeting on December 7th. The event does require city resources as well, as you see from this slide, especially since the event has greatly increased in popularity and attendance over the years. The city has provided many of these resources in the past, but this year staff wants to outline the cost in advance and request an appropriation from the general fund to cover the expenditures. If the City Council approves this year's request and wants to continue to support Candy Cane Lane as a co-sponsored event moving forward, we'll include the funding needed as part of the regular budget process in the future. So this is the breakdown of city cost. Using private security instead of only relying on El Segundo Police Department personnel will increase coverage as well as reduce costs this year. Special event insurance and the wireless sound system for opening night are also new additions. Department representatives are available to answer any questions that you might have about the plan or the budget. And when you're ready, we ask that you consider a motion to approve the plan, the related expenditures, and an appropriation of $46,955 to support the 2021 Candy Cane Lane Holiday Lights event. So thanks so much for your consideration. I am going to stop sharing my screen, but can certainly bring it back if you want to look in more detail at either the map or the budget for the event.
Thank you, Mrs. McCullum. I'm going to turn it over to council for questions or comments.
So Melissa, one of the questions I have is about porta potties, and have we thought about you having porta potties, and if we did, where would we put them? And then the gate that closes off California from where the Embassy Suites is to Acacia, is there an opportunity to put the porta potties on the other side of that wall, and then open and close that gate during the evening hours when people would be out looking at Candy Cane Lane?
Sure, we definitely talked about porta potties and walked the site with public safety and public works and residents along that street. And unfortunately, there's just not a good location for them because of the impact it would have on residents or the blockage of driveways or streets. So the recommendation this year is not to move forward with that, especially because it's possible that the duration of visits this year will be shorter because there will not be the line for visits with Santa. So in terms of the gate, however, we do recommend or Public Safety recommends keeping that gate open. I think in past years, that wall has been scaled, which creates some liability concerns. And so the plan for this year is to just have that gate open.
And then when, would they lock the gate once, like, after a certain time, like 11 o'clock at night, would that gate then be locked to ensure that the safety for the residents?
I imagine we will be able to arrange that, yes.
Hi, Melissa, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm sure you guys brought this up in discussion, but street vendors. How are we handling that this year? What could the public know about it? Do they need to be licensed? Does this fall under that law that was passed where we cannot deny a street vendor access because it's the public right of way? Can you just speak to that briefly?
Sure, absolutely. And perhaps Mark Hensley or Michael might want to join in also, but it is something that we certainly have prepared for, and there will be code compliance officers working each night of the event. Mark, are you there? Do you want to talk about that, or would you like me to cover it?
I'm sorry, we're talking about the street vendors?
Yes.
Yeah. They are permitted to be out in the residential areas, but they must keep moving. That is, they can't just, they have to be licensed through the county. They have to have a city business license. They're not allowed to be stationary. They have to keep moving. It's a state law, as you recall, I believe it was 2 years ago, that preempted cities from being able to keep them from being in the residential neighborhoods as long as they were moving. If they're in the commercial zones, they can actually be stationary, and we have very limited regulatory authority over them any longer because of the state.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring it up just because if, you know, for residents to understand what our limitations are, but as well as, you know, just for the overall concept and experience of the event. I know that in past youth groups or cheerleading groups or Girl Scout groups would set up shop in someone's driveway. So it's personal property and sell hot chocolate and popcorn and things like that. That is still allowed, correct?
Listen, it depends on what they're selling and whatnot. I don't know what the enforcement is when people are selling hot chocolate and lemonade, but whether they get county Department of Health certificates and whatnot, I don't know. But, I mean, technically there are obligations you're supposed to undertake to sell food. So I don't know when you say it's allowed, it depends.
Okay, and last question, and this is just from a safety and traffic control component. On the corner of Center Street and Acacia, there is no stop sign. And it's a pretty busy corner because it's the initial corner where there is a street closure. On that map you showed, it looked like, and maybe that was just a marker of that intersection where people would be stationed. It said 1 security guard, 1 cadet, 2 security guards, 1 cadet. But we are not changing any of the traffic flow over there. There's no temporary stop sign being placed or anything like that, correct? That might be a question for Chief Bermudez. And he's entering the building.
Is he entering? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your question.
It has to
I
do
was sitting outside.
Oh,
but
not a problem.
Uh-huh.
So the intersection of Center Street and East Acacia. So there where the 1100 block begins. That's the initial corner that there is a street closure.
Mhm.
And I saw in the staff report, it stated that there would be 2 security guards and 1 cadet stationed there.
Yes, that's the plan.
And so our plan is to hire private security guards versus just staffing with our own police officers and cadets, yes?
We are still going to have a police officer out there. Just the staffing levels won't be the same, so we're going to use a lot more private security for that.
Okay, it's a change this year, so I just wanted to make sure the residents understood that. And then we are not changing any of the traffic patterns. There's no temporary stop sign at the corner of Center and Acacia. There's no traffic control police officer out there controlling, you know, just because in the practical application of this, and many of us have experienced this, is cars will stop to drop off people or to pick up people. And that intersection becomes very hectic, right? Because people are parking up on East Acacia on the 1000 block and around on Lomita and walking down. And so it's a hot corner without an actual traffic control element to it. So I just wanted to confirm that we are not doing any changes there and we're not going to control traffic there.
No, my understanding is we're not. We are going to have a motor officer monitoring. So if there are safety issues that come up, such as a backup of traffic or whatever, then we would monitor that and address it as needed.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, I want to commend you because the 3 years, as you know, leading up to the pandemic, every year by now, this was a very vocal topic in the city because we had decided to not ignore it, but not declare it our own event. And so thank you to both of you for collaborating with the residents there. I was going to ask you, Scott, what you thought as a former resident. Sounds like you think it's a good solution, and I want to commend you guys for everything you've done.
Oh, thank you. It was a team effort. Melissa here took most of the work, but yeah, definitely we worked together on it.
Great.
Yeah, that was a few years back. It was 3 years ago when Chief Whalen was here. There was like a pilot program where the 1100 block and the 900 block of California were barricaded only on Friday and Saturdays. And the first weekend and the last weekend, not the middle weekend. And of course, on the middle weekend, there was a traffic accident at the corner of Acacia and California Street, just off the intersection. And I can tell you from personal experience, sitting on my porch when the traffic accident happened, I was scared. I was scared because 1200 block, people walk in the street, there's no cars. 1100 block, there's cars parked, people walk in the street still. And because it was inconsistent, I was not in agreement of the pilot program in regards to leaving it open on the weekends, but being a resident, I could not vote on that here because I conflicted out on that. But I am happy with where we've gone with this. And to Councilmember Perstak's point about the porta potties, you have to understand that from a resident standpoint there, nobody wants the porta potty in front of their house, near their house, smelling the porta potty. The residents there are so wonderful because even though EDCO, our trash company, provides cans and city staff empties those cans on a daily basis, there's still trash on the street. You know, without Santa Claus handing out candy canes, there may be a little bit less trash on the street because I can tell you picking up candy cane wrappers was an old pastime of mine while living there on the 1100 block. But it's a wonderful event. The residents put out a tremendous amount of effort for this. And I would say from a city standpoint, until such time as the residents are in agreement for porta potties, I think we leave that alone for now. I opened up my door to plenty of people who had little kids that needed to use the restroom, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. And so it's a wonderful community event. We're a community that has the ability to spread the Christmas joy, and Candy Cane Lane is just one of those options. So thank you, staff.
All right, someone would like to move approval?
Thank you.
Of staff's recommendation?
Jeruso moved.
Persick, second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please.
Councilmember Drew,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol,
Aye.
Councilmember Perstak,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel,
Yes.
Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
Okay, 5-0.
Okay, I'm going to suggest we take a break
Well,
until,
you have 2 items to vote on.
yeah, I think they're making approval on the Acacia Street and the balance using the funds. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, I'm saying you have to approve the safety plan and the expenditures for Candy Cane Lane, and then your other motion is to approve appropriation. So there's 2 motions, if you look at.
I'll move to approve the appropriation.
I'll second.
Okay, sorry, hang on, guys. Okay, Councilmember Drew,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol,
Aye.
Councilmember Perstak,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel,
Yes.
and Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
Okay, 5-0.
Just to be clear, for item 3, there's 3 things. We can make that one motion, correct? For the rec park needs assessment?
We'll have to look.
Maybe
at
we'll
that.
talk about that. Anyway, let's take a break until 8 p.m. Item 15, Recreation Park Needs Assessment and Master Plan Recommendations. Mr. Mitnick, who will report on this item?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Community Services Director Melissa McCollum will start us off. Thank you.
Hello again. And Community Services Department has been in front of you several times in the last few months talking about some larger, potentially transformative issues, including approved plans for the plunge renovation and an innovative dial-a-ride pilot program with Lyft. We look forward to tonight's conversation as well as the Recreation Park Needs Assessment and Master Plan recommendations that will be presented tonight have the potential to develop into the city's plan of action for meeting the immediate, the short-term, and the long-range needs for facilities and programs in Recreation Park. The information gathered in this process has helped to prioritize projects that can potentially be executed over the next 15 years. Zachary Muting from RGM Design Group is here tonight to present summary information about their analysis and professional recommendations, and there will be time after the presentation for questions and direction. Zachary?
Thank you very much, Melissa. I know it's late tonight, so I'm going to jump right into sharing my screen and going through the presentation. You should be able to see my screen now, I believe, and let me know if you can't.
We can.
Perfect. So with that, as Melissa had mentioned, really the purpose of this process was to really guide the future of the development for Recreation Park and provide recommendations that will be based off of data-driven analysis. What is essentially a community needs assessment on a citywide basis, distilled down into park-specific recommendations. And we'll go through all that information tonight in a succinct fashion, so that way we can give you an idea for the level of analysis that was conducted on a citywide basis, but as well as recreation park-specific components. Now, that analysis happened in two forms. First, the professional analysis, as well as the community voice, collecting information from the community on their views, their feelings, items they would like to see, and what they viewed Recreation Park, as well as programs across the community be developed into over the next 5, 10, and 15 years. Those two components were then combined to develop ultimate recommendations, which are identified as the immediate 0 to 5 term implementations, short term 5 to 10 years, and then long term 10 to 15 years. Before we begin really any of our processes working with the community, we start with the demographic assessment. And we looked at specifically El Segundo and got a feeling for what is the community makeup, whom the community is, and where the age differences may rest and how that compares into the county analysis. And what we see is really El Segundo is an aging community with above average household income in comparison to LA County. And specifically, when we look at the tapestry segmentation or a map of where the community lives, we find most of the community is in the upper northwest end of the city boundary itself here in these subdivided neighborhood components, where we can dive into specific tapestry elements should we need to as we collect data. Now, in order to start to develop recommendations, professional analysis is only one component. Really, our main goal was to listen to the community. And in order to do that, we utilize social media channels and crowdsourcing methods to really reach out and collect as much information as possible, starting with a project website, a portal where anybody could go on it and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and review project information, see what the project's about, as well as share direct feedback on the project website at any point in time, even up to tonight. There is a button on the project website where any community member can send direct feedback to the project team. You can see the numbers we have here represent over 1,100 responses collected throughout this process from various multimodal surveys, statistically valid surveys, online surveys, website views, and then feedback directly from that website. So we have a great representation of community input, and I want to share some of that with you tonight. Starting with the multimodal survey, I mentioned that tapestry demographic earlier. Looking at that map on the right, as we compare those two maps to see that we're getting a good geographic distribution of responses coming in from the community, and I see that through the multimodal survey. This survey was conducted from July 12th to July 22nd. It was done in both English and Spanish, and we collected a significant amount of information from the citywide topics to program-specific topics, park-specific topics, and then facility-specific topics. I want to share some of those with you. On the citywide level, We started with asking participants about whether they approve or disapprove of the job of El Segundo Community Services Department is doing. And what we find is overwhelmingly 76% of the participants approve of the recreation programs and activities being planned. We also asked, how do you rate the overall quality of the facilities? Again, we saw very high numbers here. 82% of the respondents said good to excellent. We also asked, and regarding to Public Works Department, whether the participants approved or disapproved of the maintenance in the city parks. And we found 83% of the participants approve of the parks, trees, and facilities maintenance. And these are really high numbers and something, quite honestly, to be proud of. So seeing this data moving into the project starts to set the tone of the community's views on a citywide level. We moved then into some of the programs and asking questions that were all prefaced when there is not a pandemic. So we wanted to make sure we are asking about the programs pre-pandemic, so that way we are getting responses from the community that were not necessarily COVID-related responses. Asking questions such as participation in classes and recreation programs. And we found that right there's a high percentage of participants who participate in those classes and recreation programs several times a year, 59%. And then we asked participants, how do you rate the overall quality of those programs? And we saw 84% rated good to excellent within those programs, which is a very high number. And then another question we had asked was, what do you or other your members' households do when visiting a park or recreation facility in El Segundo? And we found overwhelmingly 67% of the respondents looked at looking at the passive components, enjoying the open space and outdoor elements within parks. So we see a very high participation, high satisfaction, and high passive outdoor activities. This really starts to set the tone and where we might see some things happening more on a park-specific element. Diving in a little bit deeper now, looking at park-specific elements to Recreation Park, we asked two questions here. One is, name the park or recreation facility you use the most and why. This was an open-ended question, and what we heard was 50% of the respondents identified Recreation Park as the park they use the most. We can technically say 60% almost if we add in all the sub-mentions such as the Jocelyn Center, Senior Center, tennis courts, George Brett Field, skate park, or the Teen Center. There are several amenity mentions that were in Recreation Park that would move that up. Then we also asked the question very directly, is how often do you or your members of your household have visited the recreation park? And we found that 31% visited the recreation park more than once a week. That's a significant number. It continued on 22%, 3 to 4 times a month, 14%, 1 to 2 times a month, 15% several times a year. Recreation Park is very clearly the highlight of the city and a gem loved by the community. We found some interesting data when asking about facilities specific to Recreation Park. When we dove a little bit deeper, we asked about how often you visited the Jocelyn Center, or how often you visited the Gordon Clubhouse, or the Teen Center. We found some interesting information here where from 56% all the way to 69%, participants of the survey identified never using these facilities. This was logged as a data point, and we continued on with our analysis in the multimodal survey. Being a multimodal survey as well as a high-level city aspect, we asked the questions, what is one park and recreation facility you would most like to see in El Segundo, as well as what one program you would most like to see in El Segundo. So on this list here, you'll see some elements such as the plunge, swimming pool, or swim lessons that might not necessarily be related to Recreation Park, but there are others in here which we can start to take and learn more about what recommendations we might do for Recreation Park, such as improved bathrooms, tennis and pickleball facilities, picnic, shade, green space, youth sports programs, teen clubs, tennis clubs, and adult leagues. What we do as we move closer and closer into Recreation Park specific recommendations, is we want to look for the common thread, elements that come up regularly throughout all of our surveys. The next outreach opportunity that we had was the survey number 1. It was posted from August 2nd through August 16th, and you can see here on the map on the right, again, very good distribution across the city, all throughout all the resident neighborhoods there. We asked about likes, dislikes, how often you visit Recreation Park, what buildings you visit and why, as well as what are important park amenities and programs you would like to see in Recreation Park? So we started to move the lens in closer to Recreation Park proper. And what we see here in the upper right-hand corner is, again, very high visitation rates. When we ask the participants how often they visit, 47% identified more than once a week, 27% identified 3 to 4 times a month. And the chart on the bottom there, you notice that's from the multimodal survey. So we're seeing very strong participant visitation on Recreation Park. So we know we're getting good data directly from people who visit the park. We ask questions such as, what are the most important amenities or facilities you would like to see in Recreation Park, specific to this online survey? And on the left-hand side, you can see restrooms, playgrounds, picnic areas, walking paths, community gardens, Gordon Clubhouse, Recreation Center, mentions on improvements. I'm not going to read the whole list, but we collected all of that information and started to record some of those elements and look back on the multimodal survey to see if there were common threads. There was one common thread that stood out as well too, was, again, low building utilization for the Jocelyn Center, the Teen Center, and the Clubhouse, which was interesting. So we continue to look at that and identify why people might not be going to those facilities. We asked follow-up questions on this survey of, if people did not go to those facilities, why? And what we heard in terms of the Jocelyn Center was people were not a senior, they weren't interested, they didn't know about it, there was no reason, or they were too busy. On the Teen Center, we heard they were not a teen, not interested, no need, feels exclusive to a certain group. On the Clubhouse, we heard elements such as they were not interested, not sure what was there, no need, no reason, they didn't know what it is. So what we have already is a high degree of program usage, program satisfaction, but in two separate cases now we see low building usage and attendance at some of these elements. Survey 2, we started to dive a little bit deeper. On Survey 2 was conducted from September 1st to September 15th. This also included a supplemental video of some of the information we had collected throughout our professional analysis, identifying upcoming maintenance costs, building costs, facility costs, and I'll share some of those specific elements as we go through the presentation as well. But it started to share information back with the community in a video presentation. During the survey, participants were asked if they had seen the video presentation and watched the whole thing. During the rest of the survey, we asked participants to identify some of those high items that were common threads between the multimodal survey and the phones and the online survey, and prioritize them based on their ideas of an immediate, short-term, or long-term. Specific to this survey, we asked a key follow-up question too. Based on the information we saw as a common thread through the building facility usage, as well as combined with a lot of the numbers in terms of maintenance and upkeep that's going to be continued throughout the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Again, I'll share those numbers with you in just a little bit when we get to the professional assessments, is we asked the community, based on the video, based on the information we've provided, would they like to see potentially a new multi-generational recreation center at Recreation Park and remove some of the older facilities. And what we heard was 90% identifying that they would like to see it, whether it was 0 to 5, 5 to 10, or 10 to 15. We also offered another option is never. Keep updating the older facilities. And so that option was identified in there, but it only came in at 10%. How we combine all of the community outreach and all of the data is really to distill it down to community responses we heard the most and where we heard them. Essentially what we do is we record everything in a very large matrix. You can't see the entire matrix here, I'm just sharing a portion of it, where everything's recorded on the left-hand side, where what we heard, what their words were, whether it be in any of our multimodal surveys, whether it's the online surveys or even the feedback information. We make sure we collect all the information, we identify where we heard it and how often. That starts to identify a scale, if you will, from the needs or the items that have been identified by the community. And we identify those as frequent, which is a high need on the far left-hand side here, and apparent, which is a medium need in the center column, and then a identified need or a low need on the right-hand column. Now, I want to qualify, low does not mean it is a low priority. It simply is an indication that others that came up higher or more often throughout the community. It doesn't mean it's a low priority at all. Simply, it was lower on the scale. And you can see here, just from those community needs, what we heard a lot of were the basketball courts on the far left-hand side, some of the sports elements, open space, landscaping. Those open space elements start to come and play with a lot of the community participation in open space areas, passive areas, picnic areas, playgrounds, restrooms, teen center improvements, walking paths, all the way, and I'm not going to read the whole list, to the right-hand side where we heard a number of different elements such as fitness stations, court lighting, practice hitting wall, the soccer fields, the teen girl area, as well as volleyball court elements. We collected all of that information and developed it throughout our matrices. But what we did afterwards too, and during this process, is our professional analysis. And I want to share that portion of the presentation with you now too. We conducted a detailed site analysis, an irrigation assessment, building facility condition assessment, and really went through and identified everything that we see from a professional level of analysis. And we ranked our recommendations into a non-phased restricted improvements, a primary phased improvements, and a secondary phased improvements. What that is to catalog them in such a manner where if we were to build something, we would want to build it in phases and not have to rip out new improvements before we got to some other improvements. So there is a logical process or construction sequencing, if you will, in terms of phasing some of these improvements. So with that, what we had found after we walked the site with staff, with architects, landscape architects, irrigation specialists, a number of different designers to really look at every facility, all of the lighting, the sites, the restrooms, the buildings. We started to look at everything from a cost standpoint, from a maintenance standpoint, and from a community standpoint as well too. When we went through these facilities, we kept that community voice in mind. And I want to share with you our recommendations throughout the professional assessment process. What I've done is I've identified the non-phase restricted improvements on the left, improvements that can happen anytime, and then primary phase improvements that happen on the right, which are improvements we feel should happen first before continuing to other areas of the park. Now, what I've done is I've highlighted areas on this presentation, on this slide here, that coincide with a lot of those things we've heard from the community, starting to pull that common thread across from all of the survey opportunities, even through our professional recommendations. We found that during the assessment, really, the facility, Recreation Park, is much loved, but it has really, a lot of the facilities have exceeded their typical lifespan. Now, this is really a tribute to the maintenance of the park being very high. Without such a high level of maintenance, the park probably would no doubt be in worse condition. Now, a lot of our non-phased elements, I mentioned, can be done and moved in at any point in time, but I want to move later on in the presentation, talk about some of our recommendations on how they distill together. But before I do, just sharing the specific recommendations that we're identifying here, such as court lighting, or parking lot improvements, or field improvements, walking path improvements. Many of these things can be done and are detailed in the appendices and specific locations to identify simple improvements that can be picked up within a CIP list over the next 5-10 years immediately, and can happen in conjunction with other projects too. So if you're picking up elements such as the walking areas, you might combine that with some of the park lighting or some of the court lighting elements. They're not specifically have to be done in order. Primary phase improvements you'll see here are the Gordon E. Clubhouse, maintenance improvements, the new multi-generational community center and building. And I'm going to talk specifically about that in a little bit in terms of investments, the facility condition assessment, as well as what we're hearing from the community. Teen center improvements, Jocelyn Center improvements, the elevator and checkout building. The secondary phase improvements that we found through the professional analysis as well highlighted on the right-hand side includes elements such as the skate spot, picnic areas, playgrounds, walking paths, fitness stations, tennis courts, pickleball courts, mural art, table tennis, multi-use flex programming space, teen girl space, electric vehicle charging stations, sand volleyball, tennis volleyball, beach tennis court, volleyball court, batting cages, and a soccer field. Additional recommendations that we saw that really fall in line with some of the considerations for modern park design we see as potential new restrooms. Now, this new restroom, item number A, is going to come up when we talk about the ultimate recommendations here, as demolishing the Little League field restroom on the east end of the park and providing a new prefabricated restroom when we get to a certain point in the park's evolution. A team staging area to provide additional seating, shade, and amenities for team overlay to be able to stage fields and have different clubs, different teams move in and out of the park with staging areas. Also, if there is a need to increase play on some of those fields, we looked at consideration for synthetic turf or high-end sports turf in terms of the baseball fields and other sports fields there to look at additional play elements on there, as well as plaza and hardscape expansion areas. And when I mention hardscape expansion, it's done from a standpoint of looking at the ADA and accessibility and connectivity through the park. It does not mean doing a large-scale concrete pad out on site and having a whole bunch of benches, but it's in line with having more of that accessibility, park connectivity, staging areas, flexible programming space that represents more of the outdoors enjoyment that the community had mentioned earlier on in the public outreach portion. What we did after we combined all of our professional assessments, everything we've seen in terms of what condition the buildings are in, what condition the turf is in, the irrigation is in, the lighting is in, we combined that with the community outreach and what we heard. And we developed ultimate immediate 0 to 5 recommendations, short-term recommendations 5 to 10 years, long-term recommendations 10 to 15 years. And what we've fleshed out here is starting in the 0 to 5 years, looking at really improving, taking the first step to rapidly improve that experience that a park user has across Recreation Park. Items such as the restrooms, the walking paths, sports field maintenance and upgrades, including elements such as the scoreboard. All of the numbers you see on these slides correspond to the map that is in your packets as well too. I have it at the end of this presentation, so it shows you a location where these items are. Park lighting, a dog area, lawn bowling area, park amenities, standardization and upgrades such as the lights, the trash cans, amenities across the park, picnic tables, benches, parking lot court repairs, court storage area within to have more storage within the facility area itself and the maintenance area, open space landscaping, and then building facility required improvements. And that building facility required improvements, I would like to touch on specifically in terms of elements that came up during the facility condition assessment that have already been identified, such as the teen center, adding interior upgrades, including the bathrooms, the skate park, renovating and refurbishing skate features, fencing, removing and replacing some of the pedestrian lighting, as well as the basketball court that's up there by the teen center, going through and making sure that the court is level, the surface is contiguous, it's not cracked, it's not bowing, there aren't any perimeter repairs. Those are all detailed specifically in the report itself. But looking at the first 5 years of all of the buildings through the facility condition assessment, making sure all the maintenance and elements that have to be repaired through the report are repaired. The big change really comes into when we do a new multi-generational center building. We're making this suggestion, this recommendation, because of all the elements that we've heard in terms of the community outreach, the low program usages, and what we're hearing through the community in terms of why they're not going. But more so, it was compounded when we started to look at the amount of money that's going to be required based on the facility condition assessment. If we look at the checkout building, the clubhouse, and the Jocelyn Center over the next 20 years, it's going to cost us around $8.9 million, rough order of magnitude. If we looked at the spatial programming based on the participation rates of the telephone survey, the multimodal phone survey, we can start to get a master plan level of what size of building would be required to host those individuals who are going to the centers, as well as some flex space into that so there's some room to grow. And what we found is a recommendation, and we started to put numbers to a new 10 to 12,000 square foot facility. Our numbers are actually coming in at 8.7 million. So when we see over the next 20 years, we're going to have to spend this money one way or another. The community has low participation usages at these facilities now. They have significant maintenance that needs to be done. And when I say maintenance, that doesn't include remodeling. That doesn't include improvements. It's like for like, doorknob for doorknob, air conditioning unit for air conditioning unit. Furthermore, we see that a lot of these facilities are distributed facilities across the entire park site. So it's not one air conditioner, it's 3 air conditioners. What we looked at was combining all of these elements into a multi-generational center, so that way we could have a centralized area where a new facility for roughly the same order of magnitude cost would then last much longer. A lot of these buildings were also built, when we look at it, in the 1960s, from 1961 to 1965. So they're already pretty old. We add another 20 years onto that already with low programming use. We're going to see that start to exacerbate itself. Now, the teen center building, I want to be real clear on. We're not recommending that be removed. That teen center building was only built in the 1980s. Yes, it's still around the 40-year mark. However, that teen center building can still be reutilized and repurposed as we move on with additional programming elements within there. Those numbers are also detailed in our cost estimate to make sure that those improvements are isolated outside of a new multi-generational center. Aside from that big change, we're also recommending new skate spot developments, playgrounds, walking paths, fitness stations, mural art, paddle tennis. And again, highlighted elements here really start to fall in line with that community recommendation, the community desires for improvements at Recreation Park. When we get into the
Melissa, can you interject? We need to move along here.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I'll quickly end it right here. Is we do have the 10 to 15 year mark, which was filling in some of the additional areas within the park, maintenance areas, picnic areas, and other elements that would fill in and around those major improvements that we talked about in implementing. Melissa, I know you had a couple comments that you wanted to add to the presentation. I apologize for taking so long. We had over 700 pages of analysis and reports, and I wanted to see if I could keep it as succinct as possible. I apologize.
Thank you, Zachary. And for City Council, just a quick reminder that staff's recommendation tonight is to approve the proposed Recreation Park Master Plan to serve as a working document for the planning, enhancement, and development of Rec Park over the next 15 years. And just to be clear, if you would approve that master plan, it doesn't mean that we're going to do everything that is in there exactly as the way it's identified. We would use that plan as a guide for moving forward. And we also ask for you to consider directing staff to move forward with improvements to the teen center, skate park, and basketball courts with the $750,000 that's already been allocated for rec park projects in the capital improvement program. And Zach talked a little bit about that. It'd be $300,000 for teen center, including interior upgrades, the bathrooms, $250,000 for basketball courts, and $200,000 for skate park. And just one other detail, we would use that needs assessment master plan in preparing the 10-year capital improvement program and as part of the upcoming budget preparation process, and potential funding sources for both the one-time capital construction and recurring maintenance will need to be developed at a later date. So Public Works Director Elias Sassoon is with us as well, and we are certainly now ready for your questions and your feedback.
I know we're going to have a couple here. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you, sir. Carol, you had a question, did you, about?
I did have some questions. So first of all, the planning, the Parks and Recs Commission, did they approve this master plan?
So they were not asked to approve it, but it was presented to them in a similar way, and they did provide feedback.
And was that feedback positive, or did they have some questions?
So my understanding, and it is, it was recorded, and I hope community members have watched that one as well. But I believe overall they thought that the information was very good, and that several of them said they didn't disagree with the conclusions. But what they did want to do was make sure that the community had enough opportunity to weigh in during the process, and then also that the plan meets the needs of community members. And so I think there was some understandable hesitancy, because the recommendation to move from demographic specific facilities to a multi-generational community center is significant. And so I do believe that Rec and Park Commission, many of them, would like more input from the community to move forward with that recommendation. What we did talk about in that meeting was that all of this is going to be a process. So if that was a recommendation that moved forward, there would be, similar to the plunge, another period of time, and outreach to the community as that community center was designed. So it wouldn't just be, immediately moving forward with that project. There would still be that piece of designing it to make sure it meets the needs of the community. And also that model, there's different ways to do that. There are some examples of that where, a wing is for teens, another wing is for older adults, or other communities decide to design it in such a way that it's flexible space that can just be adjusted for all uses. So, does that answer your question, or?
Yes, it does. And
Okay.
maybe I was a little, I'm a little surprised in that, surveys can be drafted in any manner to get people to answer the way you want, right? But I'm not saying that happened, but I was under the impression that this whole survey, when we were asked to go out, was to really understand what type of activities they wanted to participate in, not necessarily build a new building. And if I was asked, do you want to build a brand new building that's a multi-generational building versus keep the old tired buildings? Of course, they're going to say, yeah, I want new. And I just, I'm just surprised that the outcome went directly to building this new multi-generational building. And because I was looking at the notes where it said about the Joslin Center, where it had a low, like in the 20s of the people who used the Joslin Center. Only 20% of the population who took the survey were seniors. So of course, but if you just ask the seniors, what percentage of the seniors that took the survey used the Joslin Center, I'm sure it would be like at 89%. So I'm just, you have to look at the answers in segments, and I'm just kind of concerned that the answers were, the way the questions were written may have been to push this new multi-generational building, which would be it would cost a lot of money.
Thanks,
Zach,
Carol.
do you want to respond, or would you like me to?
If I may, I just want to add in a couple items there too. When we conduct these surveys, we conduct them with multiple modes, some being qualitative, some being quantitative. The multimodal survey really gives us that statistically valid data to do additional analysis off of. So it wasn't just their answers, but when we took the participation rates, we actually calculated it into a architectural analysis for a per capita basis based on the population of the city and the responses returned on that statistically valid survey. And we calculated those based on the square footages of the facility that they simply were not being used to capacity. We also looked at the programming numbers as well too for 2018 and 2019, seeing the decline in all of those numbers. This is more of the back end analysis that was tied to the professional assessment of it. We really looked at what amenities does the community want in Recreation Park. Yes, they wanted a lot of elements in there, but what we saw was they weren't utilizing some very expensive elements in there that are going to need a lot of maintenance over the next few years here, next 5, 10, 20 years. So we looked at, if we're going to have to spend that money on those buildings anyway, and they have low usages, but the community wants other elements in and around the park, open space, other opportunities, how do we best balance this equation? And that's where the discussion of the multi-generational center came up, specifically by some of the responses we got from the community, which led to that survey question where we asked, would you consider this based on all these elements?
I probably got like 2 pages of questions that I wrote before I heard your presentation. I'm not going to go through all of them, but one thing you just said is really kind of confuses me. You said in your presentation that 69% of the people had never even been to the teen center, yet you're recommending tonight that we approve funding to renovate the teen center. I'm confused on that, to be honest with you. Because if you're saying that people aren't using it, why is that a recommendation?
So the teen center element, when I talk about the participants of the survey, I'm talking about 69% of the participants of that one survey. We did multiple surveys and we saw varying ranges, but they're all low usage. When we looked at the building in terms of an architectural analysis, there was a substantial amount of things that needed to be done to it, but also the condition of the facilities. And when we look at elements such as what do modern teen centers have? What does a lot of modern teen center programming have? And what does the current teen center here have? The building wasn't actually originally designed as a teen center. So it's got some challenges in there. Now, there were quite a few requests for teen center elements or places for teen girls. We can incorporate those comments that are desired from the community as well as that low building usage and provide recommendations to improve that building while looking at the multi-generational center components, and then improve the skate park as well as the facilities, the basketball court there too, with some of those funds. One of the things we did on the multimodal survey as well too, is we asked how many times people skateboarded, and we did a skateboard participation analysis tied to the square footage of the skate park. So we looked at elements in a lot more specific detail than I presented tonight, all detailed in the appendices, reports, and the summaries. But really, we do feel that those recommendations are sound to provide spaces for teens that might not come until the multi-generational center is there. There is a demand for it, and we want to make sure it can be done as successfully as possible and see some of those numbers and participation rates rise up.
And
So
if
you're
I
saying
could
that
just,
hold on. So you're
Sure.
saying that by redoing this, the participation rates will go up?
Go ahead, Melissa.
I think that's a big jump, because I think you got to look at the fact that sometimes we have our own data that we can actually use. And as I went through, I guess my big confusion is I went through that staff report. It took me 2 days, hours to go through it, and then I see your presentation, and I'm confused because it looks like a huge data dump, and it seems to me to be classic paralysis by analysis. There's so many variables thrown in here, and I don't even know what to say yes or no to right now. I haven't seen anything I can actually say yes to, because even on the things you're asking to approve, I don't see a plan for any of it. I don't even know what it means. You're like, approve it. I didn't see anything on your presentation that says this is what we're going to do with it. So I'm thoroughly confused by this presentation. I'm just going to be honest, compared to what I saw in a staff report.
And if I may just clarify first about the recommendation for the teen center, it is one of the buildings that is not being recommended to go away if the community center is created and built in a couple of years. So it could be repurposed for other uses, and so the renovations to the bathrooms would not go to waste. There would still be a basketball court, still be a skate park, so there's going to need to be a restroom in that area. So that is why moving forward with those improvements would be beneficial now, but also moving forward within that phased
I
plan.
gotta be honest,
So I think that's,
disagree with the basketball court thing, because I don't think anybody uses it. I think the skate park is used probably more than anything else there. Have we looked at, maybe we make a big giant skate park? Because that seems to be the use. You have basketball courts at Rec Park, and I don't ever see them overrun and people waiting to get into play. So, and you're also recommending that we do improvements there. So I think.
May I also clarify? So what RJM did was they did the needs assessment and the master plan recommendations. Staff is recommending to move forward with some of these projects with that $750,000. So that specific recommendation for the $750,000 is not coming from RGM. That's coming from staff, and some of that is based on council's prior, decision to support improvements to that teen center complex. But I do think it's really important if you understand the analysis and the recommendations in terms of all of the different ways that the community was able to offer their opinions about what they needed within Rec Park and what they most cared about being improved. So for those recommendations, Teen Center was noted in 4 of those 4 ways of collecting data. Skate park was 3 of the 4. Basketball courts were 4 of the 4. You can go in and find other examples of those 4, of those higher rated ones, and that's where these recommendations for these immediate ones are coming for, again, tied with the professional analysis. But you can still, within those categories, make different decisions, and that's certainly something that would still be your prerogative to do. But I do very much believe that this is a comprehensive collection of data of what the community has told us over the last 7 months about what they care about, and you know, tied with the facility conditions, the accessibility, what that true cost of fixing all of these facilities are. So.
If I might add,
Hold on,
Melissa,
I want to move it on to the mayor, on this real quick, but, one thing that also came up, right? On one slide, you said that the lawn bowling converted to a dog area was like the lowest common denominator, nobody wanted, and then you put it in the immediate thing and highlighted it. It was just really confusing. I love Parks and Rec. I am all about programming. I want all this stuff to happen. I don't see anything I can say yes to right now.
So
I'm just confused by the presentation. Sorry.
In terms of that, you know, we'll just take the lawn bowling one. I don't like to, and I did not intend to say that any of the lawn bowling were not asked by anyone. In fact, everything on those lists, it was slide number 18, were specifically asked by community members. None of it was design team recommendations at that point. But it's kind of a really important note here too, is as we're providing recommendations, there are some of those elements that might be on that identified or quote unquote low list that we can also get to with a lower cost point. Because we're improving certain areas, it's more cost effective to include some of those elements that are adjacent to it as well, to start to capture more elements. And one final thing too is, as we provided these recommendations, because the style of the assessment started citywide with a multimodal survey, a statistically valid survey, some of these recommendations, basketball came up several times, doesn't have to be implemented at Recreation Park. It can be implemented at other parks throughout the city to disperse some of those recreation components, including skate parks. The skate park we did our analysis on, you have enough square footage of the skate park, but we're seeing trends more on skate spots. A lot of teens on Recreation Park were skateboarding in the upper northwest area more often than they were. That's also on route that's closest to the high school to the north end. So really there are elements in here that can be distributed throughout the city just because of the nature of the design of the study. But some of those elements too that might be on the low list, we will weave into other areas of the recommendations. And again, you don't have to do them all in a specific order. Some of those recommendations can be teamed up with others, or they can be separated.
I have a question probably for Melissa. First one is, by the way, I totally concur with Councilmember Giroux on the skate park. And this leads to my question, which is, do we have participation numbers by sport and facility, and ideally by square foot or acreage? Because anecdotally, it does seem like the skate park gets a ton of use. And I also know that our skate park, as a reformed skater myself, is poorly designed. I'm just kidding, I still skate occasionally, but it's poorly designed. And we've talked about for years on this dais, it's been brought up before we were even up here, that we need to do a complete overhaul of our skate park. It's just not designed, it does not flow well at all. And so I think it's wildly popular in spite of a poor design. And so I think that if we had a bigger facility, you'd get a lot more participation and a better design overall. So I do have some concerns about, I think it was like $100,000 or something to recode it and upgrade the teen, the skate park. Can't remember the exact number, but do we have numbers in terms of participation outside of just the survey interest? Do we have numbers on, maybe this is from Melissa, on how many people use different facilities and by sport?
So we do have a lot of data, and all of that was shared with RJM and is reflected in their recommendations. You know, I don't believe that we keep daily use for the skate park. So I don't know that we have, and especially since it's open, so we're not always there monitoring it. Yeah. But RJM did do an analysis and found that it did not need to be expanded in terms of the data that was analyzed. And again, as Zachary started to say, kind of the trend is not to have one giant skate park where everybody goes to, but to build different skatable elements throughout the community to kind of go and meet the need for skaters throughout, you know, El Segundo. And I know that can sound scary, but what that really means is adding another skate spot next to the new multi-generation community center, in addition to renovating the one in the current footprint that there is up by the teen center. And it was surprising to me. I wasn't anticipating it, but there was a clear interest in more basketball courts. There really are not very many citywide compared to other cities within El Segundo, and they are used, both the one by the teen center and the one in the park. So there was, in my mind, identified need. But back to your stats, yes, we have stats for use of Jocelyn Center, for the use of the clubhouse, for use of teen center, and all of that has been taken into consideration.
So I just want to clarify a couple things. One is,
yeah,
I would respectfully disagree. I understand the concept of skate in different parts of the city, fully support that. I strongly believe that the skate park is poorly designed and would give much better participation if it was redesigned. But moving on to just, I know you want us ideally to receive and file this and then approve the master plan, which is a big daunting document. Thank you for all your efforts there. And then get to approving, directing staff to move forward with the improvements to the teen center, the skate park, and basketball courts. What I hear my colleagues struggling with a bit is, what specifically are the asks within those three, within the teen center, skate park, and basketball court? Because it is a little bit difficult to pick up in the matrix that was provided. So maybe you could touch on what would be done.
Sure. So it would be moving forward with all of those projects. So it would, and Elias, feel free to jump in, but if that was the direction that we would receive, we could put out an RFP for improvements to the skate park, within the next month. And the same for moving forward with improvements to the bathrooms within the teen center, as well as the improvements to one or both of the basketball courts. The one up by the teen center is a much bigger project because it would need to be recreated in order to resurface and renovate that one. The one in the park is an easier project.
Okay. I'm not clear still on what, I can read, I read part of it, item 13A and B, renovate, refurbish skate features and fencing, remove and replace skate park pedestrian, lighting, another 60 grand, and then where are the basketball court items? And then also, the school district with that bond money is building a whole bunch of outdoor basketball courts and a gym. Do we know whether or not if our residents are gonna have access to those facilities?
That would have to be negotiated as part of that upcoming joint use agreement.
They're building, what's the number? A lot of basketball courts behind the middle school, aren't they? And a gym as well. I would strongly encourage us to take that into consideration as well. But can you clarify then, can you have maybe Elias, just what are the three, maybe spell out the detail on what you're asking for with regards to the teen center, the skate park, and the basketball courts?
And Elias, you are muted.
I think Melissa can do it.
Yeah. So as Melissa indicated, we have $750,000. We could focus on the need that the city council has already spoken, which is to improve the conditions of the facilities and the bathrooms. And we could go out to RFP for those purposes. And we have to come back and frankly, after we get direct direction as to which ones we could focus on that particular area, or we could focus on all three areas. But the idea is to use the $750,000 in a most efficient manner to make the improvements that we already have identified.
Thanks. I think, I don't know how the rest of my colleagues feel, but there's so much information. I'm gonna say that it's too much to try and tackle tonight. I don't know how you guys feel, but there's just, I think we need another pass at this. That's how I'm feeling. How do you guys feel? Okay.
I think that might be the single most diplomatic thing I've heard you say. I'm glad that you did it before my questions, because I think that we could probably stand a pass at this that both lists out the order of operations in a manner that we probably all understand, and probably speaks a little bit more to our lived experience in the park, because a lot of us are there a lot, and the 500 respondents to this survey may not be as illustrative responses we're looking for, and perhaps a map or graphics that could display to us what the future of the park would look like in a manner that might be a little more marine-proof. So I think another pass at this would be.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think, I'm going to turn over my colleagues, but just the other thing I struggle with is there's so much here to commit to this to be folded into the capital improvement project for a very long period of time. Seems a bit challenging as well. Carol or Scott, any other comments before we move on?
I think to your point, this is a lot to unpack. I think the teen center on its own could be a conversation, a half-hour conversation that we could have with regards to, you know, yeah, we've had them, right? Regarding the skate park, the basketball court, the use of the teen center, why is it underutilized? Like, speaking from personal experience, and I mentioned this to Mr. Mitnick yesterday in our one-on-one, teen center is a big part of my life. Big part of my life growing up in this town, and it was in utter disrepair while we were there, and it did not hurt its popularity. I mean, the only furniture we got was donated to us. Typically, when the fire department was done with it, right, and they were going to throw it out, it came to the teen center, and we had that. And I mentioned to Scott, we used to play hockey inside that building, in our shoes, around the pool tables, right? And the quality of the construction and how nice the things were in there had nothing to do with us wanting to be there, right? So I think to the mayor's point, we can pass this down the road. I do think that it may be helpful, though, if we as a board right now discuss at a very high level this multi-generational building, and if this is even something that we have an appetite for or we don't, because what I don't want to do is I don't want this item to come back to us and then we spend another half hour talking about how we're being recommended to move towards this multi-generational building when the five of us may have zero appetite for that. And then in that half hour of that recommendation being presented to us, we become lost in really what our focus should be. And so I think we should give staff some sort of indication as to where things stand as a first pass. Even if it's not us voting, but it's us sharing what we think.
That one was 5 to 10 years out. I almost think that, yeah, okay, hold on. Let's let Scott weigh in on what you just said.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is one of those moments that if we can go back in time as your staff, we would. So this is, I'd like to view this as a good start with this, getting the information, but what I would propose, council, listening to what you're saying here, is we pause. You don't have to do anything right now, and then we schedule 2-2-1s with the council members and the consultants so you can spend some time going through this to understand what's in front of you, dissect it a little bit more, and then come back later, possibly use the Rec and Park Commission, perhaps if you so desire, to weigh in and fine tune this. There's no hurry here. There's no hurry. There's no like gun to the head to make a decision. So you shouldn't feel pressure to do anything. If I could do this one over, I would slow it down. So my recommendation would be, let's just pause, schedule the 2-2-1s and go from there.
Okay, and you can decide 2-2-1s, or does this deserve a separate meeting altogether of council, just focused on this topic?
We could
Could
do
we
that.
not have an agendized work study with the Parks and Recs Commission and have like a comprehensive meeting about and to have conversations about it? Because I know you keep saying, you said that we don't have to rush, but I've been talking about fixing the teen center for 5 years.
Yeah,
I mean, the fact now it's just sitting vacant. And I just don't, it's a waste.
Not, I just want to clarify, it's not sitting vacant. It's actually, there are our teams using it, daily.
Okay.
No, it's being used. Yeah. I can attest. My son's there, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's still being used.
Okay. But
yeah,
I mean, it's pretty bad though.
That's how we.
Right.
I
right.
I'd like to interject. That's how we got here. It was over a year ago we had money in the budget to do, the skate park and the teen center.
But
And the
we-
collective decision, if I could just remind everybody, I should have said at the beginning, was to pause, let's do an assessment of the whole rec park, make sure before you put money into the teen center or the skate park, how did it fit in the overall big picture?
And that's really, it's not that those facilities are not used, it's just that they're not activated all day long. So there are a lot of hours of the day that the teen center is not activated, or the Jocelyn Center is not activated, or the clubhouse is not activated. And so it is also would be more efficient not to have 4 facilities open 6 to 7 days a week that need to be staffed if they're not being used, you know, in an optimum way. And then, you know, added to that is the incredible cost it will take to update all of these facilities that, as Zachary mentioned, are very much past their lifespan. So the question is, do we as a city want to put in all of that money into updating, and it's not even upgrading, it's just repairing the HVAC and, you know, the falling apart roof and all of that to put all of that money into those 4 facilities just to get them to meet, you know, the most basic standard? Or would you rather put that money into a new modern facility that could be designed for current use, having now all of this data about how those buildings are used and how people want them to be used, plus all of the modernization? So that's in my mind kind of the real question. I don't know if that's
So
helpful.
I think it would help if we had the pros and cons for each of that. So if we had a clear presentation that said, here's how much it's going to cost us to upgrade all the existing buildings and had the time frame that would take. Here's how much it would cost us to create this multi-use building and the time frame, and then what we would do in those locations where the existing buildings, like what would we transform that space in those existing buildings that we would eliminate, what would go there. So I think you need to present it in a manner where we can clearly understand the pros and the cons and the costs and the timeframes associated to each of that decision, to those
Right.
decisions.
And we have all of that, and I believe Zach was prepared to talk about costs, but I know we were hitting that time constraint. So I understand the need to talk further.
Again, I think it was
coming
because
back
we
will be
tried
no
to tackle
problem.
too much at one time. So
Yeah.
with Councilmember Pierce's recommendation, I agree with this. We haven't talked about the teen center and the skate park for a long time. Why don't we just prioritize that one thing, all right, as the first thing we talk about? Because that's what you want a recommendation on anyway. But again, we haven't seen anything to actually analyze any data or comparison to make a decision. So why don't we focus on that? And then the 221s, or agendize it, or a study session, a work session. This is obviously very important, and we're not trying to say it's not. It's just not in a format right now that we can do anything with. We, I think, want to do something with it. We want to address the teen center and that whole area, but there's options that we can look at. And why don't we just focus on that first and then cycle into the next? Is that workable? Is that a good idea, bad idea?
Yes, we can do that.
Yeah, I think that was the intent tonight, but we're just, to your point, we're not quite there with information. So how long do you think you need to be able to bring teen center, basketball, and skate, that complex, back to us?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is do the 221s right away and then schedule the study session you talked about. It could be the 5 of you, you could do it with Rec and Park, however you want. We will do that, and then you can make decisions on the teen center skate park at that point, and then talk about how to proceed with the master plan.
Okay, so no
I'm happy to
action
do that.
tonight other than a receive and file, it sounds like.
That's correct.
Okay, do we have a motion to receive and file?
Giroux, so moved.
Thank you. Do you have a
First and
second? Okay, any further conversation, comments?
Well, I was just gonna bring up a little bit of historical data.
Yeah,
And, sorry, I know there's a motion and a second on the
That's okay,
board.
you can, yeah, it's okay.
And City Clerk, Ms. Weaver can speak to this, because she's been here. Mike Gordon, and when he was on council and he was mayor, he proposed a big clubhouse, multi-generational building in the location of the current clubhouse. And it was met with huge apprehension from the community, especially the adjacent residences to the north of that location, because you would drive everything to one place instead of spreading it out around the park. I'm just saying, I'm not saying we still live in the same world that it was back then in the late 90s, early 2000s, but this multi-generational building is not a new concept, right? This is a concept that's existed for a long time, and money was spent on it in the past. It was studied, it was presented to the community, and the community said no. You know, so I always, I'm a broken record, like Carol and her broken record about the teen center. I don't like spending money on top of money on top of money. It drives me insane. And so, like, yes, I'm ready to receive and file this, but on that same note, I'm also ready to say to staff that I don't like the idea of a multi-generational building.
Whoops. Okay, let's vote on the motion, and then if you'd like to make one, you're welcome to do so. So we have a first and a second. Oh, yeah, thanks. We have consensus. Okay. Councilman Nickel, do you want to make a motion on that?
Question, so I guess the motion would be, actually, now that Mr. Pimentel had to step out, I can bring it back and we can discuss that and make that motion. when the 5 of us
Scott,
can
you make
discuss
sure
it.
that's part of the staff report or whatever
and
comes before us next?
And I'll do a follow-up memo to the council delineating the steps we're gonna take, so you can see how we're gonna handle this.
Mr. Mayor, before you move on, so the community understands when we talk about 221s, that's no 3 council members can be in the same room at the same time discussing a topic that needs to be discussed in public. And I feel like the only downside to that it's positive because you get one-on-one or two-on-one time with the consultants and with staff so that you can really get into the weeds on this. But then the community doesn't think that we're, 1, doing anything about it, or 2, the community doesn't understand where we stand on it and what our rationale is and our reasoning, because then when we come here to the dais, it's like, well, we've already talked about this. We spent 3 hours in individualized meetings talking about this, and now here's the recommendation. So as much as, yes, that's beneficial for staff, I think that there is something to be said about us sitting up here and having a conversation in the public.
Yeah, I agree. I think the workshop idea is much better suited.
Yeah.
Because this is a meaty topic where the public is going to want to weigh in as well.
And the suggestion I had was you do both, so you can get some time to really understand the details of what's in there and then you, as a whole, you get together and you.
Yeah, as long as, to Councilman Nichols' point, we still have time to deliberate in public and express our comments.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, great. We are done with that one. So we're moving on to item 16, LA Metro funding for law enforcement services recommendations. Scott?
Management Analyst Portland Bates will provide a very brief presentation on this item. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, the wrong item. Interim Police Chief Jaime Bermudez. I'm sorry, I was confusing the one of the items coming up.
He's got the next one, I think.
Number 18. Yeah.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Jaime Bermudez. I'm the interim chief. The LA County Metro Authority currently has a service contract with 3 police agencies in the county to provide law enforcement for the entire metro system, and that's LAPD, which services all the systems in the city of LA, Long Beach PD, which services all the systems in the city of Long Beach, and LA County Sheriff's, which is the Transit Services Bureau, which covers all the systems anywhere else outside those 2 cities, including El Segundo. Staff recently learned that the Public Safety Advisory Committee voted to recommend to the full Metro Board of Directors that they fully defund law enforcement services from the Metro. This also includes their private security contract. If this is approved, it would require all independent cities, such as El Segundo PD, to basically cover any police services on the Metro that is in our city. We currently have 3 Metro terminals in the city: Mariposa, El Segundo, and Douglas Station. Defunding the LA Sheriffs from the Metro would negatively impact not only the Metro customers, but also our department, to deal with the increased call volume and the policing of a complex metro system. Staff recommends that the council oppose any attempt to defund metro law enforcement contracts without a detailed study on how this will impact all stakeholders. And there's also a letter on behalf of the city council attached to the staff report.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the chief? Do we have a motion to move approval?
Giroux, so moved.
Nichols, second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please take a voice vote?
Councilmember Giroux.
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel.
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel stepped out, and Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
All right, passes 4-0.
All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we're on to item 17, conversion of Hillcrest Street and West Pine Avenue intersection from two-way stop signs to four-way stop sign. And this was an item that was brought before us by residents that live in the neighborhood. Mr. Mitnick, who will present on this?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I do have Elias available to do it, but I can just simply tell you this item was before you. You directed us to survey the property owners within 300 feet of the intersection to see if they're interested in converting from 2 stop signs to 4. We've done that. The 60% threshold has been satisfied, so it's therefore recommended based on your parameters to move forward. It's up to you now if you want to do that.
Yeah, and then you're required by law to go get feedback. I think it's a statute, right? To go get feedback from the residents. We did so, and overwhelmingly, the residents in the vicinity supported this.
Correct.
Okay. Great. Do we have a motion for approval?
Nichols, so moved.
Thank you.
Persick, second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please.
Councilmember Giroux?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol?
Aye.
Councilmember Perstock?
Yes.
Mayor Potem Pimentel stepped out, and Mayor Boyle?
Yes.
All right, 4-0 passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, next we have item 18, resolution to support the Brand Huang Mendoza tripartisan land use initiative, providing the city land use and zoning laws override conflicting state laws.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this time management analyst Portland Bates will present it briefly for you. While he's coming up here with our PIO position, Public Information Officer who left the city, Portland has stepped up to fill the void dealing with legislative matters.
Good evening, Mayor Boyles, Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel, honorable members of the City Council, City Manager, and staff. In recent years, several laws have been enacted regulating local land use planning and housing policy at the state level. These laws supersede local authorities, land use policies, and practices and result in a one-size-fits-all mandate. The state mandates do not factor in the unique needs of each city or jurisdiction and do not incentivize the development of affordable housing. The California Alliance of Local Electeds is a network of mayors, council members, and other elected officials who advocated in opposition of SB 9 and SB 10 and in support of significant issues, including the preservation of local control. The California Alliance of Local Electeds is asking city leaders to adopt a resolution expressing support for the Brand Huang Mendoza Tripartisan Land Use Initiative to amend Article 11 of the Constitution of the State of California to make zoning and land use community affairs and not of state interest. Staff is recommending City Council approve the resolution for the Brand Huang Mendoza Tripartisan Land Use Initiative, supporting the efforts of the proposed initiative and expressing opposition to actions of legislature of the State of California overriding local zoning and land use authority. The proposed resolution for the City Council's consideration aligns with the City of El Segundo's legislative platform that strongly opposes state and federal legislation that seeks to preempt the city's local authority. The staff is available if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. Well stated. Any questions or comments? I got one, just a quick commentary. Been working with Mayor Bill Brand. He's been a zealot for controlling or protecting local control for many, many years in Redondo Beach. And he put this together with Peggy Wang out of Orange County. I don't know the Mendoza person, but this has been a long effort by Mayor Brand working with Assemblymember Al Marisucci. COG unanimously supported SB 9 and has unanimously supported this initiative as well. We had a public comment earlier today asking us to not support this, suggesting that we need additional housing in town and that this would create affordable housing. I want to clarify a couple things. One, we, for the first time ever, have funds set aside by this council to take on affordable housing for the first time ever with the trust fund, thanks to the school district and the sale that they made of the former Imperial School for the D.R. Horton project. And we are actively looking at that, and we've got a first pass at a housing overlay to identify affordable housing, and that's going to be put into the code in the near future. We also are incorporating affordability as a component of any new development, and there's a big project right now that's being considered that's going to have an affordability component. So I just want to set the record straight on that. Also, there is, I guess, this person suggested that new housing would create affordability. The evidence that I've seen, numerous studies by governmental and quasi-governmental agencies suggest that the scarcity is not the issue. Affordability is the issue. In fact, there's enough housing stock in LA County to house everybody and then some. It was like 20% more than what's available. The issue is people can't get into the homes. So then you ask, well, are these developments going to increase affordability? And the answer is absolutely not. If you look at what's happened with development in inner city LA, other parts, you have gentrification, you have home prices going up, and people being squeezed out of their neighborhoods. So I just wanted to clarify a couple reasons as to why we've been so adamantly opposed to SB 9, which is going to take our single-family neighborhoods and convert single-family homes into 4 units. And imagine what that's going to do to your block and your neighborhood with no parking considerations.
Especially in a water shortage. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
water, yeah, all the different resource issues. So just want to clarify that what this bill would do, this constitutional amendment would do, as you so eloquently stated, is it will not only protect local control going forward so they cannot affect our city's ability to say what kind of housing can be built, where, but they will also go retroactive and overturn SB 9 and SB 10. So just wanted to add that as well. Thank you, Mr. Bates. Any other comments or questions before we go to a vote? Okay, would someone like to move approval?
I believe this is
Madam Clerk?
a resolution and.
Oh, there's, so good, thank you.
Mayor and council, a resolution of the City
Thank you, Mr.
Council
Hensley. Thank you,
of the
Madam
City of El
Clerk.
Segundo supporting the Brand Huang Mendoza Tripartisan Land Initiative, ensuring local zoning and land use authority is ready for adoption.
Okay, thank you. And do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
Giroux moves.
Do we have a second?
first, second.
Thank you. Do a voice vote, please, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Drew,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol,
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel, stepped away, Mayor Boyles.
Yes, I know Mayor Pro Tem's dealing with a family issue right now. He'll be back, I'm sure.
Four.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, City Attorney. Thank you, Mr. Bates. Okay, item 19, fiscal year 2021-2022 first quarter financial review recommendations. Scott?
Our CFO, Joe Lilly, will provide a brief presentation.
All right, good evening, Mayor Boyles, City Council members. I will bring up the presentation. Okay, hopefully everyone can, everyone see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So this is the first quarter. So it is, covers July 1st, 2021 through September 30th of 2021. This typically for, we're going to touch on revenues first. This is typically one of the lowest receipt periods for revenues that the city has. So July through September, we typically get the lowest amount of revenues received by the city. Many of our revenue sources are cyclical, and I'll just give an example. Number 2 up there on the screen, business license tax. That is received.
Joe, sorry, we only see the title page still.
Okay, let's try this.
There we go.
Okay. Okay, great. So item number 2 there, business license tax, that is very cyclical. December, January is when we tend to get about 95, 90%, 96% of the total revenue expected. So for the first quarter, we did receive just under $7 million in revenue for the general fund. This compares to about $4.9 million last year. The greatest variance is in number 8, transfers in. You see there's a $2 million receipt this year, and that really is the ARPA dollars. So that's the federal dollars.
Joe, do you mind speaking up just a tad, please?
Yes, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, it's much better, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So the difference between the prior year, 4.9 million, and the current year, 6.9 million, is
the transfers in, which is line item number 8. You'll see we received just a little over $2 million. Most of that is related to the ARPA dollars, the American Rescue Plan Act that was passed by Congress and signed by President Biden, and our allocation for this year was just under $2 million. We will also receive another identical receipt of those funds in July of 2022. Any specific questions on this table for the revenues?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, move on. Okay, the expenditure side of the house. So I do have it listed by budget. So the highest budget being the police department and the lowest being city council. Every single department is trending under the anticipated budget where they should be. So if we just took the budget and allocated it evenly out throughout the year, you should have about 25% of your budget expended. And you can see that's most departments are well under that dollar amount. The only difference here is transfers out of $10.5 million this year. That's for the POB payment. So we transferred $10.5 million out of the general fund into the pension obligation fund. And we just did that at the beginning of the year. The actual payments for those bonds will come out of the pension obligation fund, which happens December 30th and then June 30th. Any specific questions here on this graph?
Not seeing any, Joe.
Okay. Okay, Enterprise Water Fund. So in addition to purchasing water, which is the vast majority of the expense, city also operates and maintains water reservoirs, pipelines, and equipment, which we have to maintain. So the revenues are trending right with the adopted budget. Expenses for the water fund are trending under budget. And that's due to capital projects that are currently on hold and that will start sometime later this fiscal year. Wastewater fund, same thing. Revenues are right in line with budget, and the expense side of the house is trending under budget. And again, that has to do with capital projects that will begin later in the year. And one other thing I do want to point out here, that's that third bullet point. The city did budget $2.6 million for the wastewater treatment services that we contract with the city of Los Angeles through the Hyperion treatment plant. So that's the dollar amount that we're anticipated to pay to Hyperion this year. General liability fund, again, right on target with where we should be this time of the year. We did pay our premiums in July, and that was about $1.4 million. Claims are trending under expectations at this point, which is good. Workers' compensation insurance fund, same thing. We're trending right where we should be right now. We did pay out our premium of about $900,000 in July, and claims so far this year are trending with the anticipated budget. Real quick, I'm going to touch on CalPERS. So CalPERS portfolio did have a 21.3% return this June 30. That was 14.3% above their target of 7%. This is going to result in an actuarial investment gain of about $41 million to the city. That will show up on the actuarial report that will be issued in 2022. Because of that large gain, that triggered a policy by CalPERS, and CalPERS is moving to lower the discount rate from 7% down to 6.8%. And that will be effective July 1st of 2022. That in turn will add an additional unfunded liability of approximately $16 million. So that $41 million investment gain will be slightly eroded by this discount rate reduction by $16 million. Any questions on the CalPERS impact?
No, sir.
Okay, so next steps in the budget process for the current year, 21-22, we'll have the mid-year budget presentation to council sometime in February of 2022. And then you can see the outline of various key points in time for developing the next budget, which is going to be the first biannual budget It will include fiscal year 2022, 2023, and 2023, 2024. And these dates are also on the agenda forecast. Okay, so this leads us to the next topic, the proposed City Council Finance Committee.
Sorry, Joe, before you get into that, I just had one quick thing I want to ask you about TOT.
Yes.
I see that it's trending the way you expected, but one of the things that I'm seeing in this area, definitely in LA County, is the rates are going back up. I mean, they're definitely a heck of a lot higher than they were. However, my understanding is that one of the problems is that they don't have a lot of staff or enough staff to be able to open up the entire hotel. So if you got a 10-floor hotel, you might only have 5 floors available worth of staff in order to, in order to maintain. Are you hearing things like that? Is that situation changing with, I'd also think with both football teams playing pretty much every weekend, that we would be seeing a little bit of a bump in that, and with the Super Bowl coming. So I was wondering if you had any insight on that.
Councilmember, I have not heard that. I can definitely reach out to our consultant who works with all of our hotels and have them inquire about that. That is very important to know. Now, as for the football season that began, preseason was in August, and then the regular season began in September, we have not seen a bump in the September or the October occupancy rates. They've pretty much steadily remained in the low 70% range. So we're fluctuating between 70 and 75% occupancy. Pre-COVID, that was about 90%. So we're still below, and maybe it is attributable towards hotels don't have enough staff. That could be one of the issues. And as far as the room rates have definitely increased compared to a year ago and 6 months ago. However, they are still considerably lower compared to the pre-COVID room rates. So those factors, if COVID didn't happen, we'd be on track to about 15 to 15.2 million for TOT for this year. And you can see we're budgeted, as this line item number 4, 8.4 million. It looks like that's where we're heading. Now that could improve as we get to mid-year. If we do see improvements, then we'll adjust that budget expectation. But right now, this is where it's trending.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we'll try to zero in on the football impact. But remember, El Segundo, it's the business traveler. That's our bread and butter. And that's still down with the hotels.
Okay, I have to ask now that Lance brought this to our attention. On the TOT, Joe, that 12% of budget, is Q1 normally a slower quarter? Because if
Yes.
not, that number, okay.
Yes, and it has to do with, we use what's called a modified accounting accrual approach, Mayor. So the receipts that actually the city received in July, they get accrued back to the prior fiscal year. So it only reflects partial months, not the whole 3 months.
Okay.
But then when we get to the end of the fiscal year, that will get trued up.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so we're on to the Finance Committee. Back to that one.
Okay, so the proposed Finance Council Committee, establishing a Finance Committee has been a best practice management BMP in California. And then there's a list of some of the benefits which were in the staff report. I won't repeat them unless the council would like me to. Staff is asking City Council if this is something they would like to entertain. The staff can either come back with a staff report on this item, or it can be approved by City Council tonight, I believe. And the specifics on it, maybe the city manager or city attorney can opine on that, but I believe it could just be done through a vote.
Yeah, if the council does want to appoint a subcommittee tonight and appoint members, you can do so.
I mean, it worked pretty well with the pension obligation bonds, and when you did Topgolf and things like that. I think there's credence to it. I would be in support of it.
Is that also you volunteering yourself to be on it?
Am I being voluntold? If
I was-
that is the will of the council, I would do it.
I was
yes.
gonna suggest, actually, because Chris and Scott are on the pension committee, and that's going on for some time. As much as I would like to be on the finance committee, I was gonna suggest you two, actually, Lance and Carol, to be on that one. if
I would
you're
make a
open.
motion to appoint Lance Giroux and Carol Persick to the newly formed Finance Subcommittee.
I'll second that. Okay, let's hold off, though, because we still, let's make a, do we have council consensus to receive and file this incredible review Joe put together? Yes, thank you. Okay, we have a motion, and a second. Any further discussion? Do we have a sense, so these guys know what they're getting into, how the frequency of
Yeah.
meetings, that kind of thing?
Can you give me a little bit more insight on this, Mr. Mitnick?
We would like to start right away to deal with some of our financial issues, the revenue issues and so on. So I think initially, probably fairly frequently, and then as we get in our rhythm, it'd be less so. So once or twice a month to start with. And these will be subject to the Brown Act, very transparent, with agendas and everything. And the full council will see what the topics are. And then as necessary, recommendations would come to the full council.
Sounds good.
All right, they seem up for it. Tracy, may we have a voice vote, please?
Absolutely. Councilmember Giroux.
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel.
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes.
Still no Mr. Pimentel. And Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
It's a 4-0.
Excellent. Okay, and moving on, we've got item 20, an ordinance adding Chapter 8 to Title 5 of the El Segundo Municipal Code regarding mandatory organic waste disposal reduction.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is a housekeeping item to comply with state law. We do have our consultant here. He can go right to the recommendation if you like. And if you have questions, we can go from there.
Yes, that'd be great. Recommendations would be good, assuming everyone read the staff report. So, yes, please.
You guys there? Can we put the recommendation on the screen? Or I can read it. Or
The recommendation is to drop the ordinance to implement these provisions. Do you want any background on that, Scott, or?
I think for the, just give an overview for the public, why we're doing this. It's state law, what the.
I cannot share this.
We'll have our consultant. Will you go ahead and
Okay.
give a brief verbal
Well,
update?
Well, I can talk about it verbally. So this item before you is the new requirement from Recycle for all cities in California. And I have summarized that basically. So the purpose of this item is to reduce the methane gas emissions to the environment, which is very harmful. So there are two goals that are set in SB 1383. The first one is reduction of the methane emissions by 75% by year 2025. And the second goal is to recover at least 20% of currently disposed surplus food by year 2025. How are we gonna do that? Simply by reducing the amount of organic waste, which is food scraps, green waste, paper, cardboards, etc., in the landfills. And why? Because landfills are the third largest producers of methane gas. And the way to accomplish these goals, simply the first way to do that is simply transfer the organic waste, specifically food scraps, from gray containers to green containers, where the contents do not end up in the landfills, but instead will be recycled to produce fertilizer and other materials. And the second way is to establish edible food recovery program. So that's basically the summary of SB 1383 in one glance.
Thank you, Mr. Sassoon. And when would the likely implementation be, moving from the gray containers to the green containers with our solid waste vendor?
The beginning of the year. So as January 1st, 2022, we are required to follow the requirements of SB 1383.
Excellent. Any questions for Mr. Sassoon? Great. Oh, yeah.
I just real quick, so that obviously will include a outreach to our community members on what to do and how to do this and.
Yes, so we have put that information on our website. Our haulers for residential properties, which is EDCO, has already reached out to the citizens in residential neighborhoods. As City Council knows, we have several other haulers that service the commercial and multifamily developments in the city of El Segundo. And through our consulting firm, we have also reached out to them, and they also are communicating this information to the customers. Again, we have already included a lot of information on our website. And this is really one more thing we're doing is having this meeting here. Hopefully a lot of people are listening. So we're doing everything possible to do the education and inform our residents of the new requirements.
I just think we just need to do putting information on a website is great, but people don't go to our website very often. So we really need to do a more proactive push out of information, like a Facebook campaign, a social media campaign. We just need to do a little more pushing of information out, not just expecting them to go to our website.
Okay, we'll do that.
Social media. I hear you loud and clear.
Sure.
All right. Someone like to, let's see, we'll go to City Attorney to read the ordinance by title only, and then we'll ask for an introduction.
Yes, Mayor and City Council, an ordinance adding Chapter 9 to Title 5 of the El Segundo Municipal Code regarding mandatory organic waste disposal reduction. It's ready for introduction.
Who would like to introduce it?
Persick, so moved.
Okay, thank you.
This will be brought then back for your December 7th meeting for potential adoption.
Thank you both. Okay, reports, City Clerk.
Yeah, I would just like to inform the residents that we did vote to take our recess for December 21st, but it will be back on. So we've added it back into the website as well. In case anybody's wondering, we've added it back in. So there will be a meeting on December 21st.
Thank you for clarifying that, Madam Clerk. City Treasurer, I don't see Mr. Robinson. Okay, Councilmember Drew.
Nothing for me this evening.
Okay, Councilmember Nickel.
Something struck me when Joe was doing his presentation, and I thought it might be something that Ms. Voss can look into, Mr. Mitnick, and it's with the Super Bowl approaching, is there any type of coalition between the hotel firms here in town that are working towards some collective marketing push to drive traffic to El Segundo hotels? And if there's anything the city can do to help drive that traffic to El Segundo hotels for the Super Bowl, I think there's an opportunity there, and we should definitely try not to miss it, seeing as TOT is one of our primary revenue drivers. And besides that, I hope everyone paid attention to the dates of all the holiday things going on through Community Service Department. Please follow El Segundo City on social media, El Segundo Recs and Parks on social media, and or pay attention to the Herald. The telephone number, and I hope whoever from the Herald is covering this meeting will print this in the article when they write about City Council and what we talked about tonight. For that Christmas Eve dinner, if you are a senior citizen resident who cannot make that dinner, Mr. Delgado mentioned that there will be meal delivery for that day. If you're interested in getting a meal because you happen to be alone on Christmas this year, the telephone number again is 310-524-2706. That's 310-524-2706. If for some reason you're not getting through to somebody, you can reach out to all of us at council at allcouncil@elsegundo.org, and we will be sure to forward your email to the powers that be to make sure that you are taken care of. We do not want people slipping through the cracks this time of year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Nickel. Councilmember Perstuck.
Yeah, I just want to thank the staff for the survey, or conducting the survey on the Parks and Recs. I know it sounded like we had a lot of questions and we were challenged in things, but I think it's important to know that a lot of work went into that, and we do appreciate them. It's just we now need to fine tune sharpen the pencil a little bit, and so that we can get the best and deliver the best for the community. So thank you to the staff for doing that, and for all the volunteers, especially the Parks and Recs Commission, to donate their time to the city to benefit the residents. So thank you to them, and I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Councilmember Perstuck. Just a couple things. We've got the Board of Directors meeting, excuse me, for the South Bay City Council of Governments on Thursday. Related to the Super Bowl, we have Mayor Butts from Inglewood, who's going to present on what the South Bay cities need to know about the Super Bowl, so that should be interesting. And we are considering setting aside $5,000 from the South Bay COG to discuss the formation of a housing trust for the South Bay. Interesting concept that I know Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel was working on, generally speaking, with Contract Cities Association, so more to come on that. And I certainly want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. City Attorney.
This evening, thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, by way of follow-up, I touched on a lot of the items earlier. Again, on the risk, on the rec park assessment, we will come back and follow up accordingly. And it's good to view that as a good start for tonight, and we'll get back on track. It's a daunting effort. That's one takeaway. Okay, by way of follow-up, or not follow-up, the next council meeting will be on December 7th. The main item on there there'll be a couple public hearings. The main one will be on the Raytheon development project involving the LA Chargers. That goes to the Planning Commission on Thursday night in this very room. And the goal then is to get it to City Council by the 7th of December. We will also have the parking permit zone, a preferential parking zone that's proposed for Hawley, California, and Kansas streets. It's a petition from residents that was continued to the 7th. Very exciting on the Park Place transportation project. Staff will be recommending a design award, a $5.3 million design award to the engineering design firm. And the Gateway Entry Sign Monument Landscape Architect contract will be in front of the council, so we're moving forward on that project. Thanksgiving will be next week, so we will be closed on November 25th and 26th. Well, at least the main City Hall buildings and that type of thing will be closed, library and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a memorial to read, and this is for Sergeant Calvin W. Smith II, retired officer from El Segundo PD. On Monday, November 8th, 2021, retired El Segundo Police Sergeant Calvin Smith passed away unexpectedly in his home in Los Angeles. Calvin William Smith II was hired by the El Segundo Police Department on September 14th, 1984, and he graduated from the LA County Sheriff's Academy in January of 1985. During Calvin's tenure at El Segundo PD, he served in many different arenas. He was a patrol officer, a field training officer, a detective, a school resource officer, a member of the defensive tactics team, and the SWAT team. And I can tell you, I asked both my boys, Ryan and Pat, who were 34 and 32, you remember Calvin Smith? They're like, yeah, he was the coolest cop there was. And I remember one time Pat got called into the principal's office for writing a rap song, and he was in trouble. Probably there were some bad words in there, I'm not quite sure, don't remember. But Calvin Smith was called to the school. And what did Calvin do? He made Pat recite the rap. So he was just a great guy. Calvin worked closely with the Museum of Tolerance, where he presented cultural diversity training to law enforcement officers and educators. He also served as the president of the El Segundo Police Officers Association for several years. Calvin was awarded the South Bay Police and Fire Distinguished Service Award in 1994. He was the ESPD's Officer of the Year in 1997, and he organized, I remember this vividly as well, you probably do too, Scott, the very first every 15 minutes DUI education program for El Segundo High School. Calvin promoted to the rank of sergeant in 2009, where he worked as a patrol supervisor, then as the personnel sergeant, responsible for the recruiting and hiring of new police employees. Sergeant Calvin Smith retired from the El Segundo Police Department in December of 2011. Calvin's law enforcement legacy lives on through the officers he's trained, those who served with him, and the students he mentored at various schools in El Segundo. Some of his previous DARE students are now officers at ESPD. While the impact he made on law enforcement in El Segundo was huge, Calvin's top priority was his wonderful family. Calvin adored his daughters Lauren, Lindsay, Kennedy, and his lovely wife Kathy. Calvin was also a proud papa to his grandbabies, Skylar and Riley. Calvin was a man of faith, integrity, and passion, and he will be greatly missed. With that, we are adjourned.